land on c6. I also want to highlight that a4 square. This is a theme that we've seen in so many games, right? Where now, despite being late to the party on the a file, it could be black that's fighting for that file. Rook a4, if you trade, black gets a very strong passer. b4 becomes a glaring weakness. And if you don't trade, black can start doubling up, tripling up on that a line, fighting to penetrate into that second rank. As you're showing, king h1, it's not a move that'll be played, but to demonstrate the idea.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Rook a4, I think, might be the concept that he's hoping for here. And although the bar doesn't react, I mean, this is terrifying from a human point of view. 3 squares from touchdown, the b4 pawn much more vulnerable than it was. I guess the one downside is that maybe if white defends b4, then white might be in time later to bring the knight back around. But yeah, rook a4 definitely on tap. And it's just nice to at least kind of float the idea in your opponent's mind that you might play rook a4. And often fighting for an open file, that's one of the hardest things in chess, but one of the most important things in chess. It seems basic, but ideas like you mentioned there, rook a4, just trying to double up. White now doesn't have the option of rook a5 and doubling up, which maybe he could have tried on the last go. But yeah, it's very tense. And for Pragg, again, tournament situation, that's a good and a bad thing. He's not facing any immediate trouble. He's not risking too much. Probably no advantage, that's the bad side, but he's keeping things alive until he figures out how Gukesh is, and Gukesh's game is going to finish.
Yeah, it's a tournament situation and the board situation next to him as well, right? I think Pragg, we see a little bit of his profile on the screen. I think he's doing just that, having a check-in on his good friend, but right now an absolute rival for that championship, Gukesh's board, which of course is also heating up a completely different dynamic in that one as Arjun is on the push. He's hunting down Gukesh's king. For Pragg, I think the last few moves that we saw, right, playing this, suddenly converting into this positional strategic battle, had a lot to do with him having a look at the troubles that Gukesh finds himself in. He wants to make sure that he doesn't go into a position that's a game for 3 results. He wants a game right now that's for 2 results, that he feels that he's the one who's putting the pressure, but it's fine as long as it stays in the balance. And David, that's one of the things that I've noticed about Pragg in this tournament. 2024 was a difficult year for him. For Gukesh and for Arjun, fantastic performance. But Pragg, he broke into the top 10 and then fell out of it. Olympiad was also a difficult run for him. He didn't get the kind of performances that he was hoping for. And then he comes in to Tata Steel and we see a completely different Pragg, again highlighting the younger generation's capability and skill to adapt, to take the learnings from the setbacks, to sort of bridge the holes, to fill the holes in their games, because every round that he's won, every sort of psychological fitness and strength that he's shown, after having a loss, coming back with 3 back-to-back wins, the clinical ways in which he's converted the end games, the strategic fights and the positional gains that he's gotten and then flawlessly gone on to convert them, has been a remarkable difference from 2024. You don't see him getting rash anymore. You don't see him taking any decisions anymore, which are sort of just purely on intuition, creating a mess on the board and saying fight on. Something that you'd often find in Pragg's games. So really nice to see how much of a learning mindset these youngsters have.
Yeah, he's just such an impressive guy, Pragg. He's so mature, so calm. I mean, yeah, just such a fantastic player, all types of positions. And like you said, I think mere mortals like myself, if I saw my 2 biggest rivals, even if they were friends, like Arjun and Gukesh, if I saw them doing well, conquering the world, scaling 2800, and I was still kind of struggling to make that next step, then I would just be bitter. I would just be like, those guys are just, it would throw me off balance. But Pragg just seems to kind of be happy for his friend's successes, but also to be able to use that to drive himself on. And 6 wins he's had in this tournament already. Very impressive. 6 wins in any kind of elite super tournament is a nice result. But the manner, as you say, it's the style in which he's done it in. That is so impressive. He would be a worthy winner. I mean, both of them, of course, Gukesh or Pragg would be worthy winners of this tournament. But for Pragg, maybe it means a bit more. This would be definitely the highlight of his career so far.
The quality of play has been incredibly high by Prague in this tournament. I can't think of one game where you had the feeling that he got lucky or his opponent made a one move blunder and he managed to get a point in that. It feels like a lot of the wins he just outplayed and outclassed his opponent. Now we're talking about Gukesh and we're talking about Pragnananda, but there is a third player. There's Norbek Abdusattorov who does need a miracle, but he does have an outside shot at the trophy as well, right? He's playing against Hari Krishna. And David, I'm just wondering if we can get a quick check in on that one. For Nodebek to have a shot, he not only needs to win his game, it's a must win against Hari, but he is also rooting for Arjun and Vincent. He needs Prag and Gukesh to lose to tie them at the top and to take it into a three-way playoffs. Has he managed to at least get the first part? What is in his hands? What he can control? How much progress has he made there?
I mean, Tanya, I'm smiling because this was an exciting start to the game, but this has become weird, wild, wacky. It's a fun position,
Oh.
and I'm so glad you took us in this direction. I mean, I first saw that there's a nasty pin. This white king is caught in a mating net. It's totally immobilized, as is the white rook, totally stuck. White bishop pinned. But there is a pawn hanging with a check. There's also a runaway Eddie the e-pawn here. I don't even know where to start. I'm picking this. This is chaos on the board.
Absolute chaos, and that pawn can be picked up with a check as well. We have to look into lines here because this is really hard to understand. You can't go into general principles in this position. It's so calculation based, David. And I think checks, captures, threat. There's one move that's a check and a capture as well. So I think we start with that move because to me it's the most natural one. Queen takes pawn check. What goes on here? Hari gets up and leaves. He's feeling comfortable about his position.
What's incredible to me, Tanya, is queen takes c5, the most natural move in the world. You take a pawn with check. It looks like you can go back and repeat. And the engine's like, it's only equal now. I guess queen to c6 is the block that black needs. I mean, looks so scary, though. Another check. Black moves. I don't think black wants to retreat due to the move e7. You break the pin, and suddenly, whoops, this white bishop is coming. So king c7, forced. How is this equal? Like, you're giving white all the pawns.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And maybe the king just hides on b6, and now the pin on f1, the f3 pawn under fire. Let's say queen takes pawn. David defending f3 as well. Well, e7, you probably just take on f1 and queen takes pawn in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
just to show e7, you probably take here, or maybe there's even better, and this would end in a perpetual check, just to show your point. And queen takes f6. Is it this one, Tanya? Does he have a threat to... Oh, Ivar no, says no, but now this is pinned, and this is pinned.
Let's show it. It's pretty. e7 check, king a5, and you say you've got an extra queen. But thank you so much because black's going to win the king.
Whoops. Yeah, I mean, this is crazy, but apparently there's something even better after queen takes f6 that I haven't yet seen for black. Is it? No.
So, can you start with bishop takes bishop here? Rook takes bishop. Oh, yeah. No, and this just loses on the spot. I thought it's a check, but king g2, and white's absolutely safe, and the extra pawns do the talking.
Mm-hmm. Wow, we need help from chat again. Queen takes f6. What is the best move?
Chat, tell us, how does black play for the win here? Every line that we've just played out, white's just completely winning. White's queening. So what's going on here? Did you spot something, David?
I mean, I didn't spot anything. I gave up. I mean, we found a draw for black, so that's enough. But I was a bit naughty, Tanya. I turned on the engine just for a second. I saw the top move. I'll give you 3 guesses while chat tries to figure it out for us. The Grandmaster's in chat.
Oh my gosh. Because of the way you said it, it has to be something completely bizarre. Wow, I can't even think of a bizarre move. Is it some sort of like a king a5, stepping away from any check from e7? That expression is very encouraging, I must say.
You're very close. Very, very close.
Help me, David. Okay, so king a5 is my first. I'm just going to say three random moves, which are bizarre to me, but have some sense in it still. King to a5. Let's move the king to another square. Let's go back to c7 as well. King c7, David. And let's throw in an a pawn push. And I don't even know why, but let's go a5 and dream of queening it one day.
Third time lucky. As chat said, you're doing my job for me here, Tanya and chat. Thank you very much. But a5, I mean, you're literally like, you just throw all your pawns away and you're just like, yeah, chill. It's just going to make a new queen.
Yeah, never happening.
Never, ever happening. And checkmates in the feature chat there said also queen c4. That does look very tempting. Kind of trying to pin this bishop, but yeah, a lot to calculate after e7. And yeah, I admit I'm in trouble if I need help from chat, but that's the reality of this position. I mean, who's in trouble? Who's better? Who's pressing? It's just crazy, Tanya. Like queen takes pawn. I mean, I think 99% of us would play that move in a heartbeat, but not the best apparently. Maybe even giving black some chances.
Incredible scenes. And David, I'm so glad that that's your approach, where you show us how difficult it is for a human to find these ideas and moves. Instead, of course, we have the ability to just turn the engine on, take a sneak peek when we want. But that would just sort of take away from the beauty of the moment, to just show how incredibly hard it is when you're on the board to find it. So sometimes we do need to turn to chat for help. And it's a lot of fun working that out, figuring things out like a human would on the board. That said, a5 still can't get it out of my head. So thanks for that. Thanks for giving me three options on that. So queen takes pawn, not the best move here. The most natural one. The other has to be the e pawn moving forward, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. E7. And yeah, to my eyes, this is the only other logical option. Literally half of white's army is paralyzed. So, okay, at least this is a threat. That's the order we should look at, right, Tanya, in terms of forcing moves. We looked at the check and the capture first. Then that didn't quite work, so we looked for the threat. Trying to make a new queen. Does this force black to go back?
Well, if you have 3 seconds on the clock, you go queen e8. You play first, you think later.
Yeah. Okay, now I can understand why e7 might be better. Now we take with the pawn. Now we take the pawn with check even, and queen c6 is no longer a legal. Well, it's a legal move, but unthinkable move because we queen. So black has to run. Wait, where? Oh, Tanya, this is cool. King d7. White can play rook d2 check. Break the pin.
Nasty.
Break the pin, and then you win.
And this is checkmate. Wow. I was going for bishop b5 and then winning the queen, but yours is stronger.
I mean, this is pretty good too. This is only +8 for white.
There's this saying in chess, right? If you can give checkmate or win big material, always choose big material, because the line with the checkmate, you could miss something over there. You win material, you win the game.
This is literally the definition of that quote, right, Tanya? Of that famous chess idiom. Like, you can literally checkmate in 2 moves, or you could just win the queen. But I think most of us would just rather win the queen.
That's just you being polite. Bishop takes bishop is game over. But this is not going to happen. So this one, there's still a lot of action going on, as Nordebek hasn't made his decision just yet. We are expecting him to push the e-pawn and then grab on c5, as we saw the subtle difference that exists with that move order, that black doesn't have the resource of queen c6. Let's use this moment, David. Jump out of this one. Nordebek needs a lot to go his way to fight for the trophy. Let's go back to the players who do have their fate in their own hands. And this is what we have in front of us. For Pragnananda, it's pretty much still where we left it. The rooks have come off the board, the position in the balance. It's going to be a bit of a cat and mouse play in that one, but it's all fire across the board for Gukesh. Is he surviving this? What has happened? Should we go back to our marquee matchup?
Yeah, just to mention very briefly before we jump back to that Gukesh game, there are, of course, other games involved here at the Masters. None of them can impact the top of the standings other than the 3 we've been focusing on. But a quick roundup, that Alexei Serrano has a small advantage on the top left board against Leon Mendonça. Fabiano Caruana on the bottom right board in a little bit of trouble, potentially, against Max Varmadam. Slight advantage for the Dutch player, who has lost 3 games in a row now. So it would be a great end to the tournament if Max Varmadam can take down Fabi there. But of course, still a long, long way to go in that game. The other ones pretty much balanced. And I know we haven't delved too deeply there, Tanya, but just a quick recap before we jumped into this one. This is where the action, the fire really is happening.
Yeah, we got to show the love to all the games, but of course, it is all about who takes the winner trophy right now in this one game. Super important for that. It's been such a roller coaster, such a topsy turvy fight so far. Arjun putting the pressure on. This last move on the other side of the board by Gukesh, David brings the rook into the game, attacking the knight. But before we go into this position, let's just backtrack a couple of moves from where we left it and see how we got here.
Yeah, let's backtrack because we left it just 3 moves ago. I'll actually show this bishop exchange. Knight to c4 was played by Arjun. Really nice square, nice outpost for the black knight. Can't be challenged or kicked away by a pawn. And Gukesh played this move. We came to the conclusion it was a mistake, but it's very hard at this point in human terms to find anything better. This bishop was immediately challenged. Blue arrow appears, by far the best move, spotted instantly by Erigaisi. Great understanding here that he just wants to triple up his major pieces on the H-file. And Queen G2, one of the moves we did suggest, was played in the end by Gukesh. Of course, no queen trade. He's more polite than me. He just instantly avoided any queen e4 stuff, any kind of dance between the queens. He's like, okay, keep the queens on. Game continues. Rook b1. The rook did triple up. It's kind of the Alekhine's gun, except normally you want the black queen kind of behind, propelling the gun forward and supporting the rooks. And okay, Gukesh, you mentioned the last move, Tanya. Very surprising because it looks like irrelevant almost playing on the queen side. But this knight was on such a strong post. I guess he felt he had no other option. Maybe he just couldn't move any other pieces. He wants to kick this beast away.
But on the counter of that, you're kind of kicking it away to a post it wants to get to, right? We did talk about that knight coming closer to the white king via the path of d6. The move rook to b4, while it doesn't seem to be doing anything for Gukesh's position, it kind of helps black reposition that knight to a more attacking post as well. So I'm just wondering what Gukesh wants, because to me, knight d6 feels like a very natural response here. You keep your trumps as they are. You've tied down white's queen eternally to defend the H line. Your queen and the 2 rooks beautifully lined up as well. There are ideas. You mentioned the Alekhine's battery where the queen is behind the rook. You can always reposition it there with the concept of queen moving back to g6 and then to h7. The problem with that would have been the move queen e4. The knight from d6 also takes away that central square for a defensive move like that to arrive. So why is Gukesh allowing Arjun voluntarily to just put that knight on a more useful square?
Yeah, very good question, Tanya. I think maybe it's just a lack of options. If we just backtrack one move, I mean, we talked about the H-file, of course, keeping things tied down, but you literally can't move the D1 rook. If you move it across, then whoops, the black knight comes in, and there's going to be devastation on the F3 square. Actually, as soon as F3 is covered, let's just show this. Like, black can even just force checkmate by trading off the queens. And yeah, I think this is relevant because the black knight might try to journey around the board in a different way now to cover F3, the escape square for the white king. So you couldn't move this. You couldn't move this rook away from D1. You couldn't really move this knight away because it needed to protect the D1 rook in many variations. Like moving forward now has no point because you simply get kicked, and maybe F4 will blow open the position even more. Although knight to C5, I suddenly realized threatens some stuff here, but this. Probably there's multiple ways for black to win, including just to show your tactic from earlier, Tanya. Oh, okay, Bar hates it. I was going to say maybe this is one way to win the exchange, and now knight d2 at the very end. Still winning, or better for black, but yeah, you win some material here on the first rank. But yeah, my point was that essentially, instead of rook b4, you can't really move the knight, couldn't move the rook. This was the only one you could move. Maybe some pawns, but yeah, queen, of course, tied down. So maybe he just had nothing else. Rook b4, ugly, but sometimes you've got a choice of evils. You just got to pick the least evil of them.
And I think you make a great point. And to that idea of knight e4 and this e4 square being a really key defensive point for that white queen to land into if black ever tried to reroute his queen behind the rooks. Maybe that's also a drawback of rushing with that knight to e4, David, that somehow black will get that momentum to fall back with the queen. You're also threatening rook h1 check in those positions if you just backtrack, because really when we got to this moment, it felt like knight e4 has to be the defensive move here. You're getting your knight closer to the king. It's a square you want your knight on. And now queen g6 or queen f5, you can choose which one. I like queen g6. Rook h1 is a big threat right now because that knight on e4 suddenly becomes a hanging piece at the end of the trades. You don't have queen e4. You move that knight away. Let's say you go knight to c5. I'm sure there are several ways. Maybe rook h1 immediately works as well, but queen h7 walks into queen takes pawn. So I'm going to stop right there.
But you're 100% correct, Tanya. Like knight d6, just preventing the one threat that white had on b7. Everything's covered, and now it's just unstoppable, right? Your move, your whole plan. Queen h7, the queen walks behind, the rook delivers the mate, not the queen, because queen to h1, swapping queens. There's always some hope that Gukesh survives, but I don't think there's any hope he survives here. The white knight has actually wandered away from the defense, if anything, and queen h7. This is the Alekine's gun when the queen helps the rooks from behind. Yeah, this is over.
That's going to be a bazooka once the queen lands on h7 in this position. It's a big one, a big threat to parry. David, instead, look at this move that we have on the board. Arjun has chosen to play the knight on a3, and apparently it's a very, very strong move. I mean, I just thought knight d6 is a human move, but today Arjun Aragasi is superhuman.
Wow, he's leveled up just February. Something about February. Like, I don't know what happened in the month of January. I was trying dry January, maybe. Arjun the same.
Valentine's Day inspiration.
Exactly. Shorter month, shortest month of the year. You don't have to focus as long. I don't know what it is, but Arjun Erigaisi, he's just leveled up. Yesterday, just power play against Abdul Sattarov, and now, I mean, it's not just the fact he's finding all the best moves. It's like they're not obvious at all. Arjun, some of his moves, like Bishop h6 to me was not obvious, even slightly. Knight a3, I wouldn't even looked in this direction. I mean, you said knight d6, I would have played that as well in a heartbeat, but it's actually very hard to defend this pawn, Tanya. Very clever move. How do you hold?
So you say it's hard to defend the pawn, and I'm trying to understand why. If we can just look at what's the threat. Let's say you go really passive, and again, it's probably the worst move, but rook to b2. I defend that pawn. Is there a threat on the board that black has right now that I'm completely missing?
Maybe no threat. I just saw the bar drop. Maybe it's this idea of yours again. It's just always the same idea, right? Queen f5 or queen g6.
And now queen e4 you take and rook h1. The rook on d1's hanging, David.
Oof. Painful. And, I mean, he's just totally stuck. Just to point out as well, like rook to a4 looks like a cool counterattack, attacking the knight, attacking the pawn, but black just jumps back with the knight, and white's knight suddenly is overwhelmed. Knight takes knight. Whoops, you lose protection of this rook. And it's just every angle he's going for, Tanya. He's literally split the board in half, and now he's going queenside, but I mean, main action's happening down here, and Gukesh just can't defend both flanks. Wow.
Can he create anything? Is it time for Gukesh to go all kamikaze in this position and throw b6 and hope that you take with the a pawn, and then some ideas like rook a4, rook a8, try and get one of the rooks off the board? Okay, so maybe this one works then. So maybe not with the a pawn. What is happening here?
Maybe with the c pawn? The black king, it is a bit open now, but just needs one move to hide to a very, very safe square. I like your idea, Tanya. Like in blitz, everyone at home, look for counterplay. b6, set a trap. And the a file opening, at least white's not immediately lost. Still struggling, but knight a3. Again, it's just lack of moves. I don't see... I mean, you can't move your knight now. Defend the rook. You can't move your rook. Like rook to c1, again, drops the rook after queen to h1, and there'll be a skewer here. Like you can't move your queen, your knight, rook. we've come to the conclusion this rook moving is bad. Can't move your queen.
Yeah.
Or Gukesh.
Absolutely stuck. And maybe if b6 comes, that could be an explanation for the move rook b4 as well, right? Driving the knight away to just try to create some chaos. Yes, you give up a pawn, but well, in this position, the pawns are not helping that white king. Knight a3, what a path this has been by Arjun's knight. From c6 to a5, the first time at the edge of the board, comes towards the center, and for the second time at the edge of the board. And turns out, once again, the best move in the position. Hitting that c2 pawn comes with direct threats. Now that the white rook has left that first rank, Black can also think about setting up that bazooka on the h file with the queen rerouting itself. Queen e4 would be a big blunder in that line, as we did analyze just shortly. David, the problems seem to be mounting, and even if b6 was to happen, Gukesh is still under big pressure, right? You grab that pawn, you still keep all the threats on the board. This is the first time in this tournament where it feels like the world champion is under the serious threat of actually losing his first game as the world champ. Gukesh a bit shifty on his chair, and as he is about to take his decision and how he wants to keep the fight going on with the championship on the line, we are going to go into a short break, but don't go anywhere. For our subscribers, we've got Peter Lecco, part 2 of the interview coming up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what on
think Vaikanze has changed? You know, you've been coming here for what? I can't even. Yes, a lot of years.
Yes, 17th time now. So basically, I'm slowly spending already a year of my life in Vaikanze. Well, one thing that I noticed, the atmosphere, everything is the same. It's just fantastic. But the weather changed. I mean, what happened this year, I haven't witnessed, because the last 2 days, I was not closing my jacket. Can you imagine Vaikanze just
it was even sunny.
Exactly, yeah. I went to the beach and I just felt like I can go on forever. Normally, big windstorm and you have to fight for your survival. So yeah, that was really special this year. I'm so happy for this tradition and for this tournament, classical chess with all this fighting spirit, all these young players, giving their absolutely all, not thinking about that it's 13 rounds and we are tired. They go for the maximum. It's so nice to see.
It's really an incredibly fighting tournament. I just have a final question for you. You've been here as a player many times, as a second, as a commentator. What do you prefer? What do you...
Well, everything. Actually, I do miss playing in Vaikanze because I really like the playing hall. I always like, because I'm someone who has normally a lot of stress during the games. So I prefer to have many boards that I can look at. While I made my move, I get up, I look around. I also see that other people are also giving their all. Other people also have some problems to solve. Yeah, and also having the challengers there as well. So 14 boards all the time. A lot of spectators, especially on the weekends. Yeah, you have this atmosphere. You feel like for how many people, how much it means to come here to Vaikanze. Yeah, this is, I think, just something that people who are not here cannot even imagine, that what it means to be here. Yeah, people are fighting to get into the playing hall, to get into the row that they can see the players. And for me as a player, this was always giving tremendous amount of energy. Yeah, you want to perform your best, because I do believe that, yes, chess players are not only sportsmen, they are also like artists. Yeah, so if you feel that people care about what you are doing, this will encourage you to show even more. So playing in Vaikanze was always very special, but being part of it, it's also nice now that Vincent was struggling in the tournament. This, of course, did not help. Yeah, some more positive results, and then we would be talking that, okay, everything is fantastic. Also as a second, but I'm pretty sure that with all this fighting chess, Vincent will keep on improving as a player. Yeah, now also you can see that he started to play also e4. Yes. Yeah, so he's in a transition phase. Yeah, that he is very ambitious, but it's still something new, something fresh. He's also helping Gukesh in the World Championship match, which will be in long terms also very beneficial, but maybe short terms was taking too much energy or too much attention. You never know all these kind of things, a new experience. when all these puzzles get together, then he will get a completely new quality, and then I'm sure that it will be very hard to stop him getting into the top 10.
He's been one of the players who's been really fascinating to watch throughout the tournament, as you said. I mean, we've been spoiled with so many incredible games, so much fighting spirit. Peter, thank you very much.
Just a second. Before leaving, I would like to say a few words about Gukesh.
Sure,
because he just became world champion. Yeah, so whenever you succeed with something so big, at such an early age, I think that he came here and he plays this, he's fighting for first place and he's giving his absolutely everything, shows that what a fantastic fighter he is. I have to say that feeling-wise, I feel that he can play much better, but showing not his best and being there on +5 and about to win the tournament shows his incredible potential. It's just so nice to see this. And also Prague, because I can understand, I can imagine the rivalry between Prague and Gukesh. And he also wants to win the tournament and how much it means to him and how he's pushing himself forward and everything. It's so nice to see. I think we are witnessing really fantastic times right now in chess.
Today, one player will be very happy at the end of the day. The other will be a little bit disappointed, but both of them will be coming back here for years. Peter, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. It was really, really interesting to hear from all your experiences. And best of luck to Vincent today. And
thanks a lot and good luck to everyone. Because of course I'm rooting for Vincent, but for all the participants who are doing this fantastic fighting chess. And let's enjoy the tournament.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Yes.
The clock situation in front of me, and there we have it. Gukesh down to 4 minutes, an incredibly difficult position to boot. Ideas of checkmate on his king. By the way, I do see, I think b6 was played in that position. How much of a factor is the clock right now, and can the world champion defend this under 4 minutes?
Wow, this is so big in terms of the tournament standings. This is so scary for Gukesh. He has 3 minutes left, but look at that eval bar, Tanya. It has plummeted the whole way down. Arjun Erigaisi with a winning position. We talked about his scary attack, how it was likely to break through, but with 3-4 minutes on the clock, I don't think anyone defends this, especially against such a great composed attacker like Arjun Erigaisi. Gukesh in huge trouble with the white pieces in this final round. Who would have thought this beforehand? The other board, meanwhile, we do see it. Pragnananda against Vincent Keimer. Very level. That one, all the rooks off the board now. Very blocked. So good news for Pragnananda. Bad news for Gukesh today, it seems like, as we approach the time control now.
This is getting extremely stressful for white here. David, that last move we see marked and highlighted in yellow. Gukesh just sidesteps the attack on that rook that was on d1 away from the queen, which is why he couldn't have grabbed that knight on b5. Should we just quickly go back one move? Because I think b6 happened, and let's see how we got here and then break this down for us.
Yeah, we left it here. We were predicting b6. We were correct about that. Just trying to open up the A file, which wasn't allowed by Arjun Erigaisi. Of course, he would have spotted the rook coming to the square, so he took with the c pawn instead. The black king slightly vulnerable. Rook to a4 happened anyway. The knight came back to b5. And for a second in the break, I was wondering about the move g4, just trying to break the queen's connection with this rook. But after the move g4, black could have simply sidestepped, and the white king still very weak. The black queen would defend her knight, and not only now materially level Arjun Erigaisi, but the rook coming to h1 would have been a devastating threat. So this wasn't what Gukesh chose. Understandably, he played rook to d3. This is the current position. And Tanya, if only the black king were on b8, this would immediately be game over. Knight takes knight would be followed by a queen coming in with a check, and it would be lights out. But does Arjun have anything immediate, Or is he just going to sidestep, do you think, with his king?
I was about to say then, just do it. Put your king on b8. It comes with the idea of knight takes knight. The more I look at this position, I'm not worried about white grabbing on b5 because the black queen just swoops up over to that file, opens up the path for the rook on h1, threatening the white rook on a4 and also the deadly check on b1. That's far too many threats. King to b8 comes in with the idea of knight takes knight. If white trades, white is busted. If white doesn't trade, you have to sidestep away with your own knight. Perhaps the way to go then would be to go knight to e4 if king b8. Is there a knockout blow? To answer that question, well, I can't spot it. David, any ideas apart from the simple and what to me seems like a very strong king b8?
Yeah, I mean, to my eyes, Tanya, now Gukesh is down to 1 minute, by the way, but to my eyes, there's two moves for black. You take the knight and then you play king b8. Maybe that will cut out the other option you mentioned, the white knight jumping away, or you just play king to b8 immediately. I'm not sure what the pros and cons are of kind of keeping the knights on, but the question is, I mean, I didn't see it actually, but knight takes knight. If the king then moves to b8, you are threatening both queen to d1 and queen to b5, clearing the path for the rooks. Maybe that is the path. Maybe that's the easier of the two options right now. Clear cut, knight takes knight.
And we've got someone in our chat who wants a long day of chess, and that is a possibility. That is the miracle that Notebek is hoping for, where he wins his game and Gukesh and Prague have a bad day in office, losing, going into a three-way tie. Well, I don't know what's happening on his board, but Gukesh, he's on the brink of absolute disaster here. Every move that we're checking out for Arjun leads to Rome for him. And by Rome, I mean a win. And he's about to make a decision. He does go for the forcing knight trade. Rook takes knight. He's going to put his king to safety. Arjun will. How does Gukesh continue this? I'm struggling to find a move. Queen d1, queen b5 coming in.
I did notice that rook takes a7 is a move. Just he's pausing now, Gukesh. He could also play rook to c4 check and then retake the black knight. I don't think that's going to change too much. But rook takes a7. It looks like a counterattack you're going for. But black is a piece up, so then black could maybe just exchange off the queens and kind of save the knight, extra knight for the rest of the game. Oh, I don't see any defense here, Tanya. I think he's just going to retake the knight and then he's got to pray that he doesn't get checkmated around the back here.
He does take the knight. Arjun will step away with the king to b8. I also want to point out one more threat that black has in some of these positions. Queen d1, queen b5. The black queen could also land on the e2 square with absolute disastrous effects in the position. It's all about getting your queen to the back rank, David, to find an inroad. Arjun's feeling super creative. He doesn't care about safety, king to b8. What is king d8? I mean, who plays this kind of chess?
Wow, Tanya, king to d8. I mean, there's literally no reason for it apart from. Wait, maybe. Okay, let's backtrack.
What did you spot?
How about king to b8, Tanya?
Yes.
White plays g4.
Queen b5.
Queen b5. I give you a check.
Oh my gosh. I'll let you do this. Oh my goodness. King 8 only move.
Rook takes pawn, check. And the queen cuts the escape. And suddenly white is better.
David, 100 out of 100 times I would have fallen for this. King to b8 would be a move that you just play instantly. And then g4 and you hold your head in hands and just think about what have you messed up. Unbelievable. Look at this tactical awareness that Arjun's shown. The fact that he's not only spotting his own ideas, but his opponent's defensive resources.
Wow. This is, I mean, I saw a feature chat earlier say God mode from Arjun. I've got to agree. I mean, king d8, I think nearly every human out there would just play king b8, assume we're winning. There's so many threats, but they would take their eye off the ball. The king on b8 looks super safe, but no, it wasn't. And on d8, paradoxically, it is much, much safer. There's no checks. This time g4 doesn't work. Tanya, just to point out your move, queen to b5, threatening queen b1, threatening the rook. Now the white queen still can't give any checks. I mean, rook f1 is rook h1 even is a threat, and this is just over. Wow, the full board awareness, the vigilance there. Just Arjun, like I was going to say 100% accuracy. He's at nearly 99% accuracy in such a crazy game. It's been so impressive. Yeah.
This is incredible. This is that 2800, breaking into that elite club, Arjun, going into that world number 4 ranking, the kind of chess that we saw from him. Again, David, King B8 would just be played by, I think, 99.9% of us here. It's unreal that G4, and you might be even forced to actually go for a queen trade. The more we look at that position, the more we realize that queen G3 would have been a deadly threat. And that's what Gukesh set up. How tricky was rook b4, rook a4? How much do you think Gukesh had seen of this idea before he went rook b4, David?
Oh, I think he might have actually seen all of it, Gukesh. Rook b4, like b6, rook a4. He's kind of set it up. That's so sneaky. Gukesh would have tricked most of the population, even most strong grandmasters, I would say. Gukesh would have found the way there, but king d8, yeah, that is a mark of literally a stroke of genius from Arjun, who played it instantly.
It's incredible. I mean, just this moment, and it was shocking when he put king d8. And at first, it felt like he was going for style points, right there. But no, it has a deeper meaning to it. It's what differentiates between a win and perhaps a draw, just not giving your opponent an opportunity here. And for Gukesh, the seconds are ticking down. He's reaching the 30-second mark right now, and time control still far away. He's still got David, he's got 12 moves to make it to move 40.
Oof. How to cling on. F3 played. Is there a killer blow now for Arjun Erigaisi? The white queen now is pretty much trapped. He had to play this to prevent the black queen from coming in, as you mentioned earlier, Tanya. And one question is queen to b5. Does that get the job done? Wow, we don't even need to wait. Arjun plays that move. Are we going to see a knockout blow? The white rook attacked on the edge of the board. It can capture a pawn. Where is the end? Arjun has seen it, Tanya. He's seen everything this game.
Look at the speed with which he's playing. King to d8, immediately plays queen b5. He's playing on Gukesh's clock as well as the position. Gukesh goes in, rook takes pawn. He's got no time to think, no time to calculate. And David, there has to be a finish right now. You could step in with the queen. He first goes in with the rook. If the queen was to capture it, queen b1 would have been game over. White is forced to come forward with the king. Do you just start getting greedy now? Bring your other rook in, win the queen. David, is Gukesh about to lose?
I think this might be it. Gukesh about to resign. There we go. It's a handshake. Arjun Erigaisi breaks Gukesh's heart there with a powerful performance, a powerful win. Who would have thought it? Gukesh losing with the white pieces. The first result, the first game to finish in the Masters section in this final round, Tanya. Wow. I don't have any words. It was just so unexpected, but so brilliant from Arjun.
Unbelievable. Arjun Erigaisi does the unthinkable. He stops the unstoppable. He beats the unbeatable. It's the first loss for Gukesh as world champion. And what a heartbreaking moment for it to have happened. David leading the field from pretty much the start of the tournament, always being in the mix for that championship, coming in with the white pieces, playing against a player, playing against Arjun, who's been struggling in the tournament so far. But today was an Arjun Erigaisi show. It wasn't just a show. It was a blockbuster performance by Arjun today, showing why and how he made it to that 2800 and how he's back despite having those losses just a few days ago. Beats Nodebek Abdusattorov, beats Gukesh, and now it's all up to Pragnananda.
Wow, and there's drama elsewhere. This might not be the last we see of Gukesh today because his main rival, Pragnananda, is in trouble. There might even be a three-way playoff if Abdusattorov can win his game. You mentioned there were 4 scenarios before today, Tanya. One of the 2 players winning outright, Prag or Gukesh. Gukesh is not going to win outright. That scenario has gone. Prag winning outright, still possible if he can hold his game. But it looks like he is facing an uphill struggle. Vincent with a key move right now. It looks like a blue arrow appearing. Suddenly, Nodebek could catch up. That's the final 4th scenario. There won't be a tiebreak between Prag and Gukesh unless Prag loses this game. What is this? Queen c8, the blue arrow. That's an obvious move, I would say, Tanya. White's a pawn down, but can go in the attack.
David, I'm just getting my head around everything that we've just witnessed and what that means for our tournament. Queen C8 is the move. Right now, white is down a pawn. You want to put your pieces into power play right now. For Vincent, if he finds his way forward, unbelievable. We were talking about how Nodebek needs a miracle. That miracle might just be closer to a reality right now than it has ever been. We've got the two boards up for us, and look at Nodebek Abdusattorov. He keeps his chances alive. He found e7. He forced the black queen into defense, picked up the c5 pawn with a check. David, a scenario people would have given a 1% chance at the start of the day. What do you have to say about that now?
Strange things happen in the chess world. Wow. I do remember commentating on a tournament once, Tanya, and it wasn't found. Queen to c6 played by Vincent instead. Strong, but not the strongest. I was just going to say, there was once a tournament, it was actually a qualifier for the Champions Chess Tour with all these young prodigies back in 2021. Heading into the final day, Gukesh was so many points behind that he had a 0.3% chance of winning that event. Of course, he won his last 5 games in a row and won, and took tournament victory. So strange things happen. Especially when all the players in the field are bloodthirsty like this slot are. Wow.
This is incredible. Tata Steel just keeps giving. King c7 played right now by Pantala Harikrishna. He's relying on that A passer for Pragg. He's been given another life with Vincent going in with the queen to c6. He could grab the b5 pawn. Now, David, a draw means Praggnanandhaa is a clear champion. So for it to get to any kind of playoff, Vincent has to win this position. Queen c6, it does keep still a lot of chances alive. Despite material balance, opposite color bishop, when there is a different color complex, it's about the bishop activity. Notice how the light squared bishop on b3 for Vincent has a direct target on f7. It's so much stronger than its counterpart on b4, which has absolutely no play, no activity against the white king. And that's what gives Vincent the edge to push for more in this one. But is it time to get greedy? Is it the moment that you pick up the b5 pawn, or are there more direct ideas and inroads towards Pragg's king?
Yeah, Pragg's king is the big target, as you call there, Tanya. Let's just do a quick backtrack. Black is a pawn up, so as you mentioned, Vincent could restore the balance now, take this pawn. I think a very natural move and maintains the advantage. But we did jump in at a very key moment. Actually, the exact moment that Gukesh resigned, Pragg made a mistake. Knight to f3 was played, attacking this pawn. Pragg should have offered a trade of queens with queen to c7. That's a hard move to make, giving back the pawn that you're up. The whole idea would have been that a queen exchange and knight takes e5 now, hitting this pawn would, or maybe could have been met by the move knight to e6, blocking the diagonal and clinging on in a difficult endgame. But instead, he did slip up. He played queen to e7. We saw the blue arrow appear. Queen to c8 was strong. I just want to point out the reason why it was better than queen to c6. That's because there is a pin. Queen takes b5 was played in the game. You were right, Tanya. And now h6 has to be played simply. Knight to g5 is too big a threat, breaking through on f7. And after h6, I think it must be the move bishop to d5. There we go. And this is just so deadly, the idea of pinning this black knight. King h7 would never really work out due to ideas of queen f5 check and the e5 pawn drops. So queen c8 would have been pretty much a winning idea in this position for Vincent. Pragg would have had to find some miracle moves just to survive. Instead, queen to c6 was played, h6, and this is where we find ourselves. Bishop d6, again, blue arrow appears, only move. Obvious one this time, defending the e5 pawn. Tanya, you mentioned the long-term pressure here. If white can just add his knight to the mix, it still looks so scary for Pragg.
Yeah, that's a great point you made. And Queen C8, a big missed opportunity there. And David, you're talking about bringing the knight close to the king. There's one plan that comes to mind. Push that h pawn to h5, knight h4, knight f5. f5 is the square you want your knight on. And then you work backwards how to get there. h5 could be a move that Vincent could try to put more pressure on right now. I don't think... And look at that. Pragg with 6 minutes. He still gets up and takes a walk. Is he feeling comfortable about holding this one?
I mean, he's a braver man than me. I would be absolutely terrified. He is quite close to the time control. We're at move 36. They have 4 more moves to make, and Pragg has 6 minutes left. So he might be confident of getting to move 40 at least in decent shape, Tanya. Then he'll be given an extra 50 minutes to find a defense. I think a queen exchange will always lead to a draw now, opposite color bishops. And its pawns pretty much all connected now. Not solely on one flank, but all connected. So 5 versus 5 in terms of pawns. I think Prag, his idea is probably to just put his knight on f6, maybe even play g6, h5, well, maybe not h5, but g6, put his king on g7, off the light squares. I don't know. I think it's 50% chance he holds this, Prag, and 50% chance he gets under some pressure. This one's still alive, that's for sure.
It's game on. Vincent putting the pressure, but will Prag's defenses be good enough? Opposite color bishop, you take the queens off the board, and that's an immediate draw on the spot. That's a title for Pragnananda. So for white, it's absolutely key to keep the queens on and play for attack against the black king. David, these moments, there's so much tension right now. Prag got up. He definitely had a look at what happened on Gukesh's board. He knows that now he only needs a draw to claim championship.
Oof, that is added pressure. Maybe that's why he got up, Tanya. Like the tension that must be emanating in that room right now, the tension he must be feeling. He's fingertips away. He's like 1 or 2 accurate moves away from getting the title now. Probably the biggest title of his career here in terms of super tournaments, Prag. And yeah, I don't think anyone can sit still and purely focus on the moves themselves in such a situation. But yeah, he rode his luck. Just that one moment we mentioned, Queen C8 would have put him on the brink. We would have definitely got closer to tie breaks there. Now, at least there's no immediate threats, no immediate knockout. And for Nodibek, stakes are high as well. I don't know if we zoom out here temporarily because we're in a pure queen endgame in the Nodibek Abdusattorov board. Of course, he needs to win. The job is straightforward for him, at least the equation. And there we go, Tanya. What do you make of this one that we see?
Well, you said Abdusattorov in a queen pawn endgame, and it takes me back to Tata Steel at a previous edition where Nodibek won a beautiful queen and pawn endgame against Magnus. I believe that was his first classical victory against Magnus, and it really made you feel that he knows exactly how to play these kind of positions. But this one that we've got, you see that pawn on e7 and you get the feeling this got to be better for white. Optically, it looks absolutely crushing, but notice how Hari's king is so close to that e7 pawn. One step away, and you're going to end up winning it. The a4 pawn also giving black immense counterplay, distracting that white queen. King d7 in the air. David, I don't, and king d7 played. He's got to come in with his own queen and start targeting those queen side pawns. Queen b6 is a move that he's got to be thinking about because Hari Krishna is about to pick up that e pawn on the next move.
Yeah, I think we just briefly jump into this one just to update everyone on how Nodibek's doing before going back to the key Prag game in the build-up to the time control and the build-up to move 40. Queen e4, you mentioned it, Tanya. Not only did Nodibek defeat Magnus in a queen endgame here in Tata Steel and Vaikanze, he also beat him in the 2021 World Rapid Championship on the way to the title. He beat Magnus also in a queen endgame. And Magnus said that, I think later he said that Nepo and Nodibek were the 2 best queen and pawn endgame players he's faced. So queen takes b7 threatened. How to continue here? Because just to put one variation on the board, this pawn is so strong it should be eliminated sooner rather than later. But if you take it now, queen takes b7, and wherever the black king goes, the white queen... Oh, whoops, I just walked into checkmate in 1. That's why I'm not playing in this tournament. Whoops. But no matter where the black king goes, let's go another way. The white queen will be able to pick off the a4 pawn. And white does have 2 extra pawns here. Decent winning chances, I would say, Tanya.
I completely agree with you. Queen e4, and which is why Hari doesn't allow that. The a pawn is absolutely critical in the position, but it can be forced into it, right? He could now promote that e pawn. Queen a8, I believe, has been played, David, on the board. And now you could promote, force the black queen away from that a8 square, and then grab on b7. There's one difference. Notice how that queen from e8 will then guard the a4 pawn. So anywhere the king moves, eventually white will not be able to grab that extra pawn on a4. You'll be down a pawn as white, and I'm glad you're putting that up right here for everyone to see. Yes, white has the extra pawn, the double c pawn, but the black pawn on a4 gives you enough counter chances to fight for the draw here.
Yeah, that is fantastic from Hari. That is just incredible vision. Hari Krishna, a great endgame player as well, we should mention. Queen to a8, that is a difficult move to find. Not only defending the pawn here, but also just keeping an eye on this pawn and keeping this triangle, this kind of nice triangle intact. So he's always going to defend his a pawn. Okay, this one's guaranteed to be a long game. Tanya will reach move 40 soon. Should we jump back to Prag?
Let's do it. Queen pawn endings are so much about patterns and geometry, and Hari showing he's up for the task. Let's move over as the players are getting into a bit of a time scramble. I believe just the last few moves left remaining to be made in that one. And David, if you bring that board up, we've got that h5 was played. The knight moves forward, attacking that pawn. I wonder how much does Vincent care about that h5 pawn? Is he going to just completely disregard it, go forward with the knight, knight h4, knight f5, bring that knight towards the enemy king, and just go all out for Prague's king side? And it's on the board. This is getting spicy.
It's getting spicy. It's getting scary for Prague, I've got to say. And just to point out one safety hazard, if knight takes pawn, I think white was just winning after the move knight to f5. This bishop is attacked no matter where you go with the black queen. You can actually simply just take this bishop, and after queen to e8 check. I just wanted to point out this variation. This is a check. The black queen cannot defend because now bishop takes f7. Again, you're pinned, and you lose the queen next move after the king moves. And if you run away with the king, bishop takes f7 is just lights out. You're attacking the knight, threatening checkmate. If the black knight drops back, checkmate this direction instead. So this would be over. The pawn is untouchable, Tanya. It's poisoned in the current position due to this variation. So what is his intention? How's he going to meet this terrifying knight to f5 jump?
Well, it's coming regardless of what you play, right? There's really no way to stop it. Without having the option to go g6 to defend that square, you have to try to look for activity. You have to try to improve your queen. I was going to think of going queen c7 or queen a7, get it over to the white king, give some checks. But here we've got Prague really wanting the endgame, and it makes a lot of sense as a defensive move. Now, the queen trades would be an immediate draw offer. It would mean handing over the championship to Prague if Vincent was to take that queen on d7. I'm expecting him to keep his chances alive, find a good square, go queen a6 or go queen b6 and follow it up with that knight coming to f5.
Yeah, I like that too. I don't think Vincent's risking anything, even if Vincent, if everything goes wrong, you lose the h5 pawn, you run out of your attack, probably you can just trade queens later and go into an opposite color bishop endgame. So Vincent, there's no reason at all for him to play it safe. Especially the fact that he was one of Gukesh's seconds, good friends with Gukesh. I think he will want to do his friend a favor if possible. Of course, he wants some rating points. He's had a tough tournament, Vincent, hasn't won for a while. So yeah, keeping the queens on is almost a guarantee here. You have four safe squares to keep her on. I'm not sure the best. I quite like your queen a6. One of these two, Tanya.
I like that also because it stays connected to the black bishop, right? So you're kind of stopping the black queen from getting active on the g4 or the h3 square. I also like your idea of going queen c4, lining up with the bishop, eyeing that f7 tender spot. As long as you can make sure that the black queen doesn't come over to the white side, I'd be happy with any square. But queen b6, maybe there's queen c7, David.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like putting my queen on dark squares in general if there's a dark squared bishop for the opponent, but queen c7 is a bit annoying, and trying to trade queens or trying to come in. Maybe your queen a6 move, and it's played. I just want to mention one key variation, Tanya. I was trying to work it out, but now knight takes pawn. If the white knight jumps into f5 attacking this bishop, at first I thought, oh, the bishop just drops back, but can white play this really cool move now? Swing it across, queen to g6. Oof. You pin, you attack, and if the knight moves, now you grab this pawn. Check is all the pins, essentially. And I don't know where the smothered mate is, but I mean, this is clearly winning for white. This is just over. Cool tactic.
I love how this time you didn't look for a checkmate, but you're going for the queen in this one.
Yeah. You taught me well.
And I completely agree with our feature chat there. Man is saying that this is a dramatic finish. What a day it's been already. Well, Gukesh suffering his first loss, putting his championship in a big doubt, a big question mark. Pragnanda needing only a draw, but under pressure. Not a back pushing for a win in his game against Hari Krishna. Queen a6 is the move of choice, the square of choice by Vincent. I really like the lines that you showed there. The threats with the knight, bishop, and queen combined against the black king would be absolutely deadly. David, the bar doesn't give a massive advantage to white. But again, we often talk about human evaluation and human perspective in a position. This has got to look far more scary than what the bar implies right now for black.
Definitely. Especially considering the fact he's only got 3 minutes, Prague. We saw him standing up. Now we see Vincent leave the table. But Prague, he's got 3 minutes to make 2 moves. But these next 2 moves are going to be so crucial, Tanya. If he survives to move 40 intact, gets the extra 50 minutes, no big harm done to his position, then I think he's going to win the title. But the kind of scope for blunder, the possibility of blundering now is so high. I mean, we saw one variation that loses on the spot for black, like knight takes pawn, poison pawn. I don't even know how to begin defending, like bishop back to e7 or f8 maybe. Oh, it's terrifying. Gukesh must be watching this, right, Tanya, from his hotel room or somewhere, just being like, come on, Vincent, come on, Vincent. He's not out of it, Gukesh.
Yeah. I think for a month, last part of November and half of December, we had Vincent rooting for Gukesh, go Guki, every single round. And I think right now, despite the fact that Prag's a very good friend, it's the other way around where Gukesh is really hoping that Vincent can pull this off. And that would mean we'd get a playoff, at least a two-player playoff. Prag, he does move the king away from dangers along that diagonal, but it leaves the f7 spot a bit tender. Now, if White immediately jumped in to grab that pawn, David, that's the first move that comes to mind, because you get the feeling that you might have an extra pawn, but the tactics, bishop takes pawn, queen takes bishop, White picks up the black bishop, the h5 pawn is hanging at the end of that line, and then threats of the queen coming over to d1 with a check. This would be dream counterplay for Prag.
Yeah, just counterplay is such a kind of non-possibility in the current position that this is a dream, as you say. Also very objectively strong. Just to show that one more time, bishop takes f7 is a deflection tactic. The queen is lured away, but yeah, just in time. I mean, queen takes pawn, not only trying to come in, but also defending this e5 pawn, very importantly. So Prag has that one under control. I wonder what should be done next. I just wanted to point out one other variation, Tanya. I think king h7 is very clever, although the bar didn't like it. I was actually trying to defend like bishop to e7, try to hold this knight, and like knight f5, and like queen to c7. I was looking at, there's so many tactics. There's like queen to c8 check type tactics here with forks. Oh wow, black's not lost here. I thought this was a game-winning tactic for White, but bishop to d8 apparently saves the day. Just queen takes queen, there would have been a fork. And I was just going to say, the reason Prag is so clever with his move is because he's getting out of all of these forks. That's why the king on h7 I really liked where he's putting it. But apparently White has something good here, something strong. Whoa, queen a2.
Whoa. That was not on my radar. We're looking at moves like knight f5, bishop takes pawn, coming in with some threats like that, but a retreating move by the queen, lining up with the bishop, and now the blue arrow says that Prag must go on the defense. He has to step back with the king to keep a fighting chance alive. He's got about 2 minutes to figure this out. David, it's not an easy move to make because you've just placed the king on h7. It's through process of elimination, through realizing that there's no other way of defending that f7 pawn, that perhaps Prag will find this and play king to g8.
Yeah, I think it's just it's the type of thing you just never allow. Bishop takes f7 here. You don't want to drop a pawn. There's all sorts of mating nets around the black king if that pawn ever falls. So he will find king to g8. He's just double checking. This is move 40 for everyone at home. So this is the last moment he can use up this 1 minute 45. He will get 50 extra minutes after this turn. So yeah, no rush yet for Prag. King g8. Tanya, I get the impression Vincent might have played queen a2 because he knows he can, at the very minimum, repeat the position. And he just wanted a break, freshen up, go to the bathroom. And this one, it's going to continue past the time control when nerves are going to be jangling even more. Still no guarantees. What do you predict?
I'm going to stop and give up on predicting anything. With the way Tata Steel Chess has played out so far, I think predicting is absolutely the most useless hobby currently in this tournament because nothing goes as one might expect in this one. David, king g8, he's reaching out for it. He does make time control. And I think you're absolutely right for Vincent as well. Now he's going to take these extra minutes that are going to be added. He knows he's got the pressure on, and he might even repeat it once by bringing the queen to the more active square and then finding his way forward. We might see the knight jumping and arriving on f5. I don't believe that we're going to see a repetition. I don't believe we're going to see queen a6, king a7, queen a2, king g8 going into a draw. This will be played out. Prag, he keeps sitting on the board, but we will definitely see these two players go into freshen themselves up, kind of take a breather, get back into the zone, calm themselves down out of this time control excitement that players feel reaching the 40 move mark. And this is going to be a long fight. No repetition coming up.
Fully agree, Tanya. We're going to be here, on the edges of our seats, I've got to say, just anticipating what's about to happen next. It feels like there's still a twist or turn ahead. And Pragg, the one thing we can say is he's definitely worse. He's fighting for his life, fighting for the draw, fighting for the title. But if he defends this, then he deserves to win the tournament. It's not going to be easy. Vincent's going to put some serious pressure on him in the next few moves.
Yeah, and he's feeling it. Last year as well, it was a tournament that went so well in the first half for Pragg, and then things collapse in the second half of the tournament. He checks, he double checks, he triple checks, he's made the 40 move, and now he's going to go just freshen up, take a break, walk around. He knows he's on the defense. He has to have that mind shift to hold this position. It's what's required for the championship. A draw would be good enough, but a draw is far way off. And the board right next to that, that's the bottom row in brown right there. Still an absolutely berserk position, right? White has that pawn on e7. Hari has the A passer going forward. Notterbeck, he's just captured on g5. David, the bar says it's equal, but to me it looks like a position, a game, where anything can happen. A position for all three results.
Yeah, a crazy position. My eyes got distracted there. The bottom right, Fabiano Caruana apparently has just blundered against Max Varmadam, and under 1 minute there. But as you're mentioning, Abdusattorov, that's where the kind of the jeopardy is right now. He needs to win to have a chance, and this is the position. He's going to be praying against Pragg here. He's also another Vincent fan for the next few hours, Tanya Nodibek. And this position, I mean, I don't know how it could be equal. First move that comes to my mind is black parking the king back, but that would drop some pawns potentially. I don't think black should be pushing the a pawn because just to show if black does push this a pawn, white can now do what we were talking about earlier: make a new queen, deflect the black queen, and take this pawn with a check. And wherever the king goes, there is this check, and the pawn drops. So this endgame would be horrible for black. 2 pawns down. If we go back to the game, yeah, I'm expecting this move, king to e8, or maybe something like g6, just cemento, block things up. It still looks like he needs a bit of luck here, Tanya Nodibek, to have any chance of joining that tiebreak.
Absolutely. I mean, he needed a whole lot of luck at the start of the day. Well, one result has gone his way. He still needs to win his own game and hope for a Vincent win on the Pragg board as well. David, really interesting what you point out, that black really wants to push the a pawn, but you need to make sure the geometry, the pattern, that when white promotes to the e8 square, the queen can stay connected to that a passer, which wouldn't be the case if that pawn got to a3. The other move that you said to me, this was really the move that you're dying to make, right? Put that king on e8, just stop that pawn from promoting. But then you have to calculate all kinds of lines of what happens if Nodibek gets greedy. Because there's queen takes h7, just suddenly out of nowhere, the other side of the board. You don't have time to push the a pawn because there's a check on the back rank winning the queen. If you grab the e7 pawn with your king, queen takes g7, wins a second pawn with a check, also creating dangers. And yeah, I'd love to see how the bar reacts to this position, because after queen takes g7, yeah, this looks like big advantage. The g and the h pawn will assist each other to go on and promote, and the black king also out in the open. I think this one's too dangerous to hold.
Yeah, I fully agree. I kind of said king e8 before I realized queen takes h7 was available, and yeah, it's the move you want, right? But maybe just don't have time for it now. That makes me think that g6, just to put this one last move on the board, g6 might be the way. Okay, the eval bar doesn't move. I was going to say it's a very Hare Krishna type of move as well. He loves a solid foundation to his positions. And yeah, king e8 next is probably the move if white does nothing, just to blockade the pawn. And in the meantime, yeah, Alfie, the a pawn, is running down. Abdusattorov, the a pawn here, is sprinting down the board.
What about Hari the h pawn for Nodibek here? If you go h4 in this position, just passing the ball, because king e8 is queen e6 a dangerous move for black to handle in that position.
Oh, good spot, Tanya. King to e8, block queen to e6, maybe. I mean, there is a threat, just to point out for everyone. Maybe black's just in time with queen to a6 here. Yeah. Queen exchanges don't work due to black's pawn running. Enough to save the day. Oof.
Pragg was focusing on Gukesh's board before it's over. Now he's turned his attention apart from his own board to check out what's happening on Nodibek's. He still is on the defensive task. anything can happen. Like you said, 3 possible scenarios. We started the day with 4. Prag could win outright. We could have a 2-way tie between Prag and Gukesh, or we could have a 3-way tie between Nordebek, Prag, and Gukesh. Chat, what do you think? Which scenario is going to occur today? What do you think is going to happen? Does Prag win outright? All he needs is a draw, or will we have a playoff for the championship? Let's have a poll running on our chat.
Yeah, these are the 2 key games. We see Vincent now thinking he's got a luxury of time. He's got over 50 minutes to think. Those minutes will be added. So ignore the clocks on that left board for now. Those minutes will be added once one of the sides ticks down to 0. And the queen endgame, I'm going to say for now, Tanya, that a draw is the most likely result. I trust Arakrishna's defensive skills. Harry actually instantly brings his queen back. It looks like Nodebek needs some magic to win his game. But Prag, it's all about Prag. What is it about that guy? He's just... he just needs a draw. It sounds easy on paper, but this position is anything but easy on that left side of our screens. Nodebek, in the meantime, has made move 40 and leaves the table.
Prag, you're right, has been on beast mode this entire tournament, and that's the left side of our screen. Vincent versus Pragnanda. Right now, Prag feeling some pressure. And David, we were being told that in an earlier poll, when the day started, our audience, 78% thought that Prag is going to win Tata Steel. And I wonder now, with how the day and the events have unfolded, how our chat feels about the action that's coming up and that's about to happen. We know that chat can be quite prophetic. They know what's happening in the future. 3-way tie, let's go. Would love to see it. I think as commentators, we are always rooting for more chess. We always want chess to win. Would love to see this come down to a wire for a playoff. We all remember last year's Tata Steel. It was a 4-way tie, David, including players Nodebek Abdusattorov and Gukesh, both in the mix of that 4-way tie. Eventually, it was Wei who went on to win the championship in dramatic style. What's going to be the story today?
Yeah, what's going to be the story? I think all bets are off, that is for sure. Nice to see that in that previous poll you mentioned there, Tanya, almost 7,000 of you voted and backing Prag to get this job done, get over the line. Last year was dramatic. I think, I was just watching, but it came down to the last few minutes to see how many would be in the tie for first, who would be in the tie for first. There was some last minute kind of surges as players managed to get there, join the tie. And of course, the playoffs were just dramatic, pure drama. Even until the very last seconds, it wasn't clear who would win, Wei or Gukesh. But this time, first, step 1 is, do we see tie breaks? We would love that, of course. We'll be here all day, Sunday fun day. But Tanya, Prag wants nothing to do with the tie break. That is for sure.
And all he needs to avoid that is a draw. But Vincent has got something to say about that before letting it become a reality, as he's in a think right now. So King G8 was played by Prag. It was the only move to defend that F7 pawn. And right now, with time control having been crossed, with 40 moves being made and all the extra time on the clock, Vincent, he's trying to find a way forward. David, looking at that left side of our screen, the blue board, ideas of the knight jumping forward to F5, bringing that queen back to A6. How dangerous really is this position? Because you look at the two players, and if we weren't to look at the board, it would almost feel as if Prag was the one putting pressure on Vincent.
Prag, I think he's just trying to keep that cool exterior, not even to say anything to the opponent, not even just to act strong, act tough. I think Prag is feeling the internal nerves, and he's trying to will himself to just stay focused for the next hour. Prag not at the desk. Vincent, the eval bar on that left board there, Vincent Keimer, it says a small advantage for white. That shows there's no knockout blow. He's not winning. And if there's no immediate kind of clincher for white, long-term Prag should be fine. He doesn't have too many weaknesses, just the one on the F7 square. And often when it's just full focus on one half of the board, as it is in the Keimer Pragnananda game, you need more than one weakness. It's as simple as that. You need 2 weaknesses to attack in order to overwhelm the opponent's army. So Prag, he's gone into full defensive mode. Black's never going to win this game, but a draw is enough. I'm going to say, Tanya, he's the favorite to win this tournament right now as it stands, but he still needs to prove it, Prag, and he will still have one or two nervy moments getting that needed result.
Well, David, move 40 has been played in each of our game. The players have made a time control, and it's time for our chat to check out the subscribe button, to also check out our poll as we go into a short break. The fight is still on. The fight for championship is very much on as the games do continue.
Do you think you were a bad teammate in our match?
Yeah, I do think so. And I'm so sorry about it.
Yes, I wanted it on record.
That's true.
Just, patching up some old,
Do you think the chess world would be better if you were world champion?
Of course.
True.
Do you regret playing your match versus Hans?
Yeah, of course. Definitely.
Yes, true.
My work is done here.
What do you think of?
But the last question, it also raises a lot of emotions in it. Yeah.
Do you think over the board cheating exists in top level chess?
I really don't think so, no.
Of course, there's some uncertainty here, but I'll give him a true on that.
You don't think? Wow, I thought you would.
There is a possibility, but I don't think that's the likelier of the outcomes now.
Did you care when your rating dropped below me? Were you bothered by it?
More by that it dropped so low than it was below you. And to be fair, even at my lowest, okay, at some point it was below you. Yes. No, but it bothered me that, of course, that it dropped so much, but no, not particularly.
Okay, so there are some things around that question that he's...
It bothers him. Basically, it bothers him. It bothers you.
I'll explain you the entire...
It's okay.
So at some point in time, it would have bothered me that I dipped below you. But now I dipped so low that the entire dip bothered me.
Basically, it bothers
more.
you that it went below my rating. It's fine. It's okay.
Whatever you want, take it. Fine.
So you asked me to rate myself on a scale of 1 to 10 as a person. How would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah, I think a solid 6. A solid 6.
He got really scared about getting that question.
And how would you rate me?
I think like a 9.
It's a lie for sure.
No, he's truthful.
Wow.
After the detector test, definitely. before it was like a 7, 8. Now it's just...
Interesting.
Next, we have the big 4 of chess tactics. These are by far the most common tactics, and if you just learn these tactics from this video, you will win a lot more chess games. First, a double attack is exactly what it sounds like. You create 2 threats with 1 move. For example, attacking 2 pieces, or maybe attacking a piece and threatening checkmate. Next, a fork is the most common form of double attack. 1 piece moves and attacks 2 different pieces. In this classic example, white sacrifices the queen to make way for this gorgeous knight check. The knight attacks both the king and queen, a special case known as a royal fork. White bags the queen on the next turn. A pin is when an attacked piece cannot move, because doing so would allow the capture of a more valuable piece hiding behind it. An absolute pin is one where moving the pin piece is illegal, because the piece in hiding is the king, and you are not allowed to make a move that puts the king in check. A relative pin is one where you can move the pin piece. You just don't want to, because you will lose material. Here's a great example from a world championship challenger, Viktor Korchnoi. He captured this defended pawn because after the queen captured, rook d7 pinned the queen, and white was guaranteed to capture the queen on the next move. You will also see spectacular examples of unpins, tactics that break a pin, like this one where white shocked black by sacrificing the queen to free the pinned rook on f2 to deliver a checkmate on the back rank. Finally, among our big four, we have discoveries, or discovered attacks. These are when a piece moves out of the path of another piece, unveiling a threat and hiding. Our previous example of a double attack included a discovered attack, as one of the threats, bishop takes f7 check, is a discovered attack to win the black queen. Discovered checks are special types of discoveries, where the revealed attack is a check, and double checks are the most powerful form of discovery. Both the piece moving to reveal the attack and the attacker give check. Double checks force the opponent's king to move out of the check, allowing you to follow up by executing any threat that the opponent wishes they could have stopped last move instead of moving their king. I used a double check recently to finish a spectacular forced checkmate. After sacking my queen, I gave this double check, which forced my opponent's king to the h-file, where I was able to checkmate it.
Do you think you were a bad teammate?
Yeah, I think it's really nice to be back to Tata Steel again.
Tata Steel is known as the Wimbledon of chess.
Such a prestigious event that all the great players from the past have played in this event.
I hope that my play will send a message.
My ultimate goal is to survive till the end.
I think I'm ready to play again, yes.
I'm very happy to be in Vaikanze. I'm extremely excited for the tournament.
I'm very excited to be a master this year, and I want to do my best and prove to myself that I'm capable of playing at this level.
For everyone, it's a really important step in their career.
I hope I'm very well prepared and looking forward to win this tournament. I feel ready to fight for the win. The game is on.
positions. We'll bring up our bird's eye view, what we've got in front of us. We see there Adin Soleimani with a win against Irina Bulmaga. What are the chances that we get a three-way tie in the Challengers?
Yeah, that would be some nice symmetry. Masters challenges both potentially finishing in ties, but it's looking unlikely, I've got to say. Soleimani getting the job done. But for Van Nguyen and for Erwin Lamy, those are the two boards at the bottom there on the left, the green board and the brown board. It looks unlikely. Benjamin Bock was in the chasing pack. He was half a point off the lead. He can no longer win the tournament, but he has a very stable position. It looks like a draw, the most likely result. That bottom left green board, that is good for neither player. A good tournament for both players, but they will not be winning this section if a draw does indeed happen. But more dramatic for Erwin Lamy against Vaishali, who we talked about earlier. She's been in a rough patch of form lately, not on a great streak there. But she is doing the business. Erwin in big trouble. It looked like he was taking big risks earlier on in his desperation to win with black. But they haven't paid off. They have backfired. And Tanya, it looks like Soleimani, odds-on favorite to be promoted, elevated into the master section next year.
And what a fantastic run it's been for Soleimani the last few rounds. They were 3 back-to-back victories and doesn't stop there. Today, when it mattered the most, he delivers one more time with the black pieces. And now he's just hanging back, looking at his rivals in their games. Like you said, Vaishali in driver's seat, complete control of the position. That B7 pawn should have been an Erwin Lamy pawn. That's going to be a big nail in Lamy's position. Next to that, Van Nguyen also, well, not really clear where he's finding his chances. We'll keep one eye on this and update everyone as these games progress. A lot depends on it. Who makes it through to the Masters next year? Stakes are high, but stakes are extremely high in this battle right now for Nodirbek Abdusattorov, who's come so close to the title in his past 2 editions. But David, the action that we've got right now, a lot of trades have happened. The pawns have disappeared off the board for white and for black. This is about to end in a draw.
Yeah, not much to play for, actually, for either side. The one thing not to do for Nodirbek would be to trade queens, because the black king, after a queen trade, would be in the center, and the black king would be running towards this pawn. Clearly, you don't want a king and pawn endgame where you have the more passive king. So I'm expecting a flurry of checks, maybe from this angle. And as long as Nodirbek keeps the queens on, it's guaranteed to be a draw. And just maybe a quick backtrack, Tanya, to see how we got here, because Nodirbek looked like he had some pressure when we last left it. Just around the time control, but okay, there's a check. I was waiting for the handshake there. It hasn't happened yet, so let's jump in. We left it around move 38-39. White played this move, queen to e5. Harikrishna blocked now the white pawn. Now there's no pressure on the b7 pawn. And after the white queen dropped back, there was a check. Very clever check here. And after king to g2, now the black king drops back finally. And this is how the pawns got traded. And yeah, queen takes a4, check, king takes pawn. White's got 2 weaknesses, unfortunately, so you can't keep the pawn advantage. And here we go, racing towards the finish.
We're seeing a repetition. David, these are the final moments. For Nodirbek, his dream of the title for the 3rd time is about to come to an end. And I think he's coming to terms with that.
Look at that. The 2 differing expressions, right, Tanya? Harikrishna, he knew it's a draw. He looked quite pensive. He's just like, yeah, fair result. I defended well. Harikrishna was under pressure the whole game, but go to Nodirbek now and look at this. Yeah, frustration on his face. He tried hard. He played very well this game, I've got to say, Tanya. He's played very well the whole tournament, but just fell a bit short. He will regret that missed opportunity against Vincent Keimer at round 11 and then round 12 in this closing stretch, losing yesterday against Arjun. A draw might have been enough if he had been able to win today, but yeah, ultimately, he couldn't get the job done. A draw any second now. Handshake. We're expecting it, Tanya.
It's, I think, about to happen, and we saw Prag there walk by, take a sneak look into what is going on, and he knows this is about to end, so it's going to be all about what he does on his board. As we see the repetition, it almost feels, and hurry, he's looking up for the eye contact, and there we have it. Handshakes, Nodirbek gives us another thrilling battle, but the result, David, it's just not enough. The world number 6, for a 3rd time, falls short at the finish line. 3 years, 3 near misses. For the Uzbeki superstar, the trophy remains out of reach.
Remains out of reach, but he should look back with pride. Abdusasharov, it's been a very consistent performance here in Vaikanze over the last 3 years, always racking up some victories. And it feels like he'll get there sooner or later. He will win one of these tournaments if he keeps playing like this. So great tournament for him. Likely to finish in third place. Harikrishna, meanwhile, very impressive as well. Tanya, I've got to say, he took some losses along the way, but he also got some great wins. I remember a nice grind against Arjun Erigaisi, a beautiful victory against Max Varmadam, and reasons for both the players to be content with their tournament performance.
I'm not sure Nodebek shares your feelings about that, David. You know, we've seen him in so many of those interviews, and he's made his intentions very clear, just how hungry he is, how close he's come in the previous editions, and then missing out the way he did this time as well. He had so many great positions as well against Gukesh, against Prague, against Vincent, all those missed opportunities, and then to see it all slip by in that round 12 loss against Arjun Erigaisi, and Nodebek ends his campaign with 8 points. Well, he is going to go back on a third place, that's second runners up. And David, that's just not good enough for Nodebek. He only wanted the championship. Only that would have made him happy, but it wasn't to be this year. And now it comes down to that one battle we are zooming into surely. It's got to be Prague with the black pieces, holding on to his defenses, needs a draw now to claim victory at Tata Steel.
He needs just a draw, Praggnanandhaa. Let's show the board. Let's jump into this game because only one move, Tanya. And I'm not going to say it's 100% clear. It's not 100% obvious that you have to retreat the queen in this position. We talked about how he should be able to hold Praggnanandhaa. He needs to hold if he wants to win this tournament outright. But he'll need to find some accurate moves along the way. And what do you make of this? A check? How obvious do you think it is that the queen needs to block? Because to my eyes, there's other moves, like king to h7 is one candidate. You could also maybe block with the knight, but self-pinning, not quite ideal. Do you think he'll find it?
Yeah, it's a good question. The one thing is that you really want to get the queens off the board, right? Every opportunity that you can get to offer a trade is something that has to be on your mind. I think that the answer to that question really depends on what does Vincent have in mind after queen e8 and how easy is that to spot, because it's definitely not going to be queen takes queen. So Prague is trying to calculate what happens. And David, the one thing that is a possibility is that now if the queen was to come back, you in some ways gain a tempo, right? You fall back with your queen attacking, and we've got a move. Queen e8 has been played. Again, queen takes queen would be gifting Prague the championship. I'm expecting the queen to come back and connect itself to the black bishop on d6, a6 and b7. Actually, queen b7 is also tempting, but that does allow black to go queen to d7, once again offering a queen trade. So perhaps queen a6, win that tempo, force black into defense, and then get your knight to f5, the square that we've been dreaming of for that white knight for such a long time.
Yeah, I love that move. And just to show that if black were now to play the move queen to d7, white getting the knight into f5, this is actually a gain of a full tempo because earlier Prague was trying to avoid this. He had his king on h7 in similar circumstances. Now the black king is forced back as a target. And that move, as you predicted, duly played. I just wanted to break down as well, like king to h7. I think the main reason Prague found this, I mean, other than just being a fantastic player, of course, is that king to h7 does allow knight to f5. And now there's no bishop to f8. I think the bishop on f8 is the best square in terms of controlling this knight and its targets. Knight takes pawn now, just to point out as well, would have walked into a nasty pin and you win the bishop. So I think process of elimination is just too scary to allow knight f5. No good square for this bishop. And likewise, just another point. Bishop f8, it looks like you can block and chill, but knight to g6 is another annoying pin. You attack the bishop, you are not able to capture on g6 due to this pin. So Prague found the best move instead, queen to e8, queen to a6. And the question is, Tanya, how many times will it just be the next 20 moves in a row? How many times will he have an only move just to cling on and defend?
He's good at finding only moves. And sometimes, David, when you've got an only move, it somehow makes chess easier to play. The problems happen when there are too many options. The pressure builds on. And we also know on the other side of that coin is that blunders don't happen in a vacuum when your opponent keeps piling on the pressure, keeps you kind of busy finding those only moves. Eventually, the cracks start to appear and suddenly you're in this position where you find yourself making making that blunder out of nowhere, a position that's in the balance, the bar completely drops down. But that didn't happen actually out of nowhere. It's incremental pressure. Now, David, looking at this position, Queen D7, Vincent definitely wants to get that knight in. But I'm also thinking, when you're the defender, you're also looking for active squares, right? A player like Pragg, he wants counter chances. Is the square of b8, queen to b8, defending that bishop and also attacking the white bishop, and at least for the time being, you delay the option of that knight jumping in. Is that something that's on Prague's radar right now?
Yeah, definitely, Tanya. That's a nice spot. I think I would have been very inclined to start with Queen D7 just because it was the defensive setup that he was trying to hold with Pragg. But then, yeah, you've pointed out the square. And anytime you can gain one tempo, I think that's a bit of a lifesaver because then you have a bit more time to organize yourself, whether it's kind of putting the bishop back on f8 or kind of maybe even taking this pawn in the near future. If you gain one tempo, that could be priceless for Pragg. So definitely Queen b8. It's the more forcing move. Rather than starting with Queen d7, he should calculate Queen b8 first. And if he likes the look of it, you might be able to play it. Queen d7 is the alternative. I just wanted to ask a question as well because initially I was thinking, okay, you retreat the bishop, you keep it safe. But knight to f5, is this a big enough threat now to scare black? Knight takes h6, undermining the defense of this knight. I don't really see a move, Tanya.
It's a scary threat. And now that you point that out, it makes me think that if black was in fact in the starting position as well to play Queen d7, knight f5 comes with the exact same idea. Black bishop falls to f8, and your idea of knight takes pawn.
Wow. I mean, I expected the bar to just rise, but this wins a pawn for white. Is this... I mean, this looks horrible to defend. Absolutely horrible. But opposite color bishops. So you can kind of beg for a queen exchange and maybe you're holding. But this is surely never going to happen. This is last resort chess, right, Tanya? You don't give up a pawn like this unless you really have to.
But maybe, David, like you said, you give up the pawn, but you get rid of the knights, which are a key attacking piece. A queen exchange is once again just a draw, and Pragg might feel that he can hold this position. With the king, the bishop, and the queen all lined up, defending, it's not easy for white to break through. I do see ideas of either advancing the f-pawn eventually. You'll have to look for a break, right? Either get g4, g5 in, or get in with f4. But is this realistic winning chances for white?
Oh, good question. I mean, it's the type of position I think Vincent would, if you offered it, he would snap your hand off. He'd be like, yes, please, I can sit here for the next 3 hours and torture you. But yeah, the question is whether it's realistic. I mean, I also see ideas of marching the king in at some point, maybe even with a queen exchange. But yeah, if the computer says it's a draw, it means it's a draw. And for Pragg, that's good news. That shows that even if he kind of, everything goes wrong, Tanya, even if he blunders and gets to this kind of situation, it's still within the realms of holdable. And you just need something that you can be confident in defending. I think Pragg will try and avoid this unless he can't find anything better, to be honest. But yeah, that's interesting. Queen d7 then looks like it walks in that direction, and that's not appealing at all.
And then it comes down to how much of a winning prospect does Vincent think this idea is of giving up the knight, recapturing black's knight with interest of an extra pawn, but going into this opposite color complex of the bishop. Because very often, David, these kind of positions you can also play on forever as white, right? Just keep improving your pieces, keep putting the pressure. That bishop from b3, place it on c4, a more beautiful square. Shuffle around with your queen. Black really can't do much, but stay as you are because you have to keep every point defended. The king, the bishop, the queen, and the knight can't really move to any active squares. So maybe just maximize your own position in these slow improvements, bishop c4, king g2, before striking in with knight f5, knight h6, if Keimer thinks that that endgame is not going to be enough to play for a win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe at some point Vincent can force that endgame. Again, maybe it's kind of Pragg doesn't want to allow it unless he really has to, even though it might be a draw. Vincent doesn't really want to go into it unless he has to, because it might be a draw. But then again, you are pawn up, applying pressure. So yeah, there's a lot of mind games at stake. This is guaranteed to be a long, long battle. And yeah, for Pragg, it's going to be a lot of suffering. But that's like life, right? Sometimes you have to suffer in order to get to achieve your dreams. You need to put in the work, put in the grind. And it looks like he's feeling the heat, Tanya, on the camera, but still should be holding this one.
No pain, no gain. And right now it's pain max, right? For Pragg. He knows that, well, Gukesh has lost, and it's been a surprising result because at the start of the day, everyone would have put Gukesh as a favorite in that matchup, simply given the form that the two players have got in their pure objective chess strength. There's very little that differentiates Arjun from Gukesh, but they've had far different tournament, this Tata Steel. And then that was a complete shocker turnaround from the very start with the white pieces. Gukesh falling prey to Arjun's attack. And then Nordebek as well losing. Like you said, the pressure that Pragg feels right now, he's on the defense. For Vincent, so much depends on his mindset. He's not fighting for the title. How much of a motivation is he feeling right now? He wants to finish on a high note, but is that good enough to go all out, to be completely focused at this moment, which is required to sort of squeeze out the tiniest of advantages in this position? David, this is an absolute thriller of a final round that we're being treated to, with so much at stake, and it all depends on this game in front of us.
It is a real thriller. We're 4.5 hours in, but we still don't know what happens next, whether we'll get a playoff, whether we'll get a champion in the next couple of hours. You mentioned that about Vincent, Tanya, about the motivation. First of all, I think all these top chess players are so motivated. That's the only reason they can stay at the top. They put the hours of work in day to day. They study openings. But I do have some personal experience as well against Vincent in a final round in the Grand Swiss a few years ago. It was a few years back now, 2021. But I played him in the last round, a lot at stake. A win would have potentially given us both chances to qualify for the candidates. Ultimately, it turned out that it wouldn't have been enough, but we sat there for nearly 7 hours fighting it out. And even though it was the last round, even though a draw might have been a decent tournament for both of us, ultimately it was a draw. But I can attest to the fact that he had the stamina, the motivation, the drive, even when he was a few years younger. And of course, these top players, they're so universal. They know that this type of position, Vincent knows there's no risk at all for him. So he might as well play on. He might as well try his chances. And whether he breaks through, that's the only question, as he's making Pragg think. At least that's step one. You've got to burn the opponent's clock, I think, Tanya. You've got to burn Pragg's clock and then hope for maybe a mistake under time pressure.
Exactly, right. And if you're able to create those circumstances, one big factor to that would be to keep as many pieces on the board as possible, to kind of keep the pressure on. Yes, you can cash in, win an extra pawn. It almost feels by force in the next few moves for white, that 8-6 tactics that we're looking at. Very possible that we'll get that. But how much of that pressure will ease out for Pragg once the knights are off the board? Or will Vincent really try to have the boa constrictor approach here and, strangulate Black's position to a big degree before really moving in with any cashing in options? And to your point, David, absolutely. Vincent, he's such a fighter. He's a long game player. He knows that just in the back room, in the analysis room, he's got Peter Lecco waiting there, who's with him in Vaikanze, who's looking at this game. It's exactly a Lecco kind of positions where, you're trying to grind and squeeze things out, the smallest of advantages. So we're in for a long grind and a long fight. And with what's at stake, the championship, that's exactly what we should be getting. He knows that just in the back room and the
exactly.
The smallest of
and
advantages.
The players know what's at stake.
So we're in for a long grind and a long fight. And with what's at stake, the championship, that's exactly what he knows that just in the back room and the smallest of advantages.
I wonder whether we jump in
for a long
show some moves.
grind and a long fight. And with what's at stake, the championship, that's exactly what he knows that just in the back room and the smallest of advantages.
I wonder whether we jump in trying to avoid that much due to the pressure. We should run variation here.
The championship, that's exactly what he knows that just in the back room and the smallest of advantages.
I wonder whether we jump in trying to avoid that much due to the pressure. We should run variation.
The championship, that's exactly what he knows that just in the back room and the smallest of advantages.
I wonder whether we jump in trying to avoid that much due to the pressure. We should allow variation. It's nice, but doesn't immediately win the game. But one thing not to do: knight takes h5. We see the bar shoot up because of this beautiful queen g6 move. Again, profiting from the pin and also this pin. When the black knight moves, knight takes h6 is simply lights out. So you cannot get ambitious. You just have to curl up and defend. And I was wondering about your move, queen attacking the bishop. I don't think a bishop exchange really helps. It helps white here. White's bishop is clearly superior to the black counterpart. So you mentioned this move, bishop c4. And now I was just trying to figure out how to stop White's idea. Knight f5 is landing next. It's like a pre-move. It's a bit ugly, Tanya. I was going to say, can black play a move like bishop e7 and after knight f5 go like
bishop d8? You want to fit it? You want to go king f8?
Oh, I was going to get king f8, but I'm scared
it's better than the one.
Rise.
It's better than the one I was suggesting. Bishop to d8, king f8. Well, it might be but the bar. I wonder which. Yes, knight d6. You just can't allow that knight on the square.
What's wrong with this? I thought I'd covered all the holes.
So we need to find a way for the white queen to make inroads. But all the squares are defended. How are we improving this position as white? Queen a2?
Yeah, you come back, attacking this pawn. Good start. The black queen has to defend this pawn now.
Really boxing up the black pieces there. You're still not finding that knockout move here.
Yeah. I mean, I was just curious, like, what if black goes super passive? And according to the eval bar, this doesn't work. Maybe it's queen a5 doesn't do much.
David, at any point, does white start thinking about f4?
Tip black over the edge. Maybe now. Maybe. Ooh.
Oh.
Computer says no. But you're right. I mean, it's on the cards. We don't need to rush it, right? First. I'm really attracted to queen a5 somehow.
Well, queen I like that.
Queen a5 attacks this pawn. Okay. Bar says it's fine. Queen here defends this pawn. I mean,
now can you go knight e7, queen c5? Because queen d6, you win the f7 pawn in the end.
Ah, nice. Yeah, maybe there's something even better, but this is good enough to kind of bank a decent advantage. Now you trade queens and computer says no. Maybe black gets quite active here, Tanya. Coming in.
Chess is tough. Chess is hard. I think we have to turn to our all-knowing chat. Why is that such big advantage? Your move queen a2, the idea that we were figuring out, and then queen coming in, it looked really strong there, David. I think till then we had it figured out. So knight f5, king f8, queen a2, queen e8. And what's the follow-up here?
And the reason, for anyone wondering, I know we're getting bogged down in the variations here, but the reason is because this is likely to mirror what actually happens in the game, right, Tanya? It's going to be Vincent trying to create a threat every move, Pragg trying to defend every move. Vincent trying to create a threat, Pragg defending. And it's going to be this kind of back and forth until basically Pragg defends perfectly and it's a draw, or until Vincent does set a trap that Pragg does walk into. So it's like in a football or any sport pretty much, but a training drill where it's like you only have attackers versus the defenders. And your job as a defender is to just try and prevent any goals. Your job as an attacker to score. You don't even care about, you're not playing a proper game here. It's just a training drill. And I don't envy Pragg at all. I quite like queen b8, but what to do next is a bit of a mystery.
And add to that all the noise about how close, just within your reach, just on your fingertips, you've got the championship, but you've got this whole position to handle the final hurdle. It just adds to that whole pressure for Pragg right now. And David, completely agree. I think breaking down these ideas just shows that even though the material is in balance, as his sister has a little peek into what's going on, she's in complete control in her game against Erwin Lamy, enjoying advantage there. And she knows just what's at stake for her brother right now. I like how she's watching from behind, David, just avoiding any more noise, any more added pressure on Pragg. Yes, the ideas that you were breaking down, I think we might be seeing some version of those. And this is exactly what's going on in Pragg's mind as well as he navigates through this labyrinth of, well, they're not tactical complications, but just the pressure in the position and trying to understand how to handle and keep it together, keep the position balanced. Where's the fortress where I can keep everything defended as black?
Yeah, exactly. It is a bit of a mind twister here. I don't know what the phrase is, but yeah, you just need to figure out where best to put like these four pieces. If you put them on the right squares, you might draw. If you put them on the wrong squares, you might lose. And the tactics that you mentioned, just to show one final cool variation, Tanya, Like if black does play, for example, queen d7, the white knight jumps in, attacking this bishop. If you don't want to allow this whole bishop f8 and knight takes h6 tactic that we've been going on about, allowing the queen now to poach on f6, then at first I was like, oh, maybe you can play bishop e7. But okay, again, it doesn't win. This is so annoying. But the queen to c8 check. I was one that I wanted to mention, trying to lure away the black queen in order to finally land a winning fork. But apparently this doesn't win, probably because of bishop to f8. And everything's, I mean, it's hanging by a thread for black. Like you're barely defending, but you are defending, and that's the key. So wow, I mean, Pragg, it must get confusing inside that mind of his now, like where to put the pieces, going around in circles. White has so many options, Tanya. White is having all the fun here.
And that's the one part that we tend to underestimate, right, about competitive chess. You're in your fourth, fifth hour of play. You're looking at all these differences in these small variations. What happens if white jumps in with a knight first or moves the bishop? Eventually, Pragg does take the decision of falling back to f8, but going around in circles of these long variation, and suddenly there's fogginess in the brain, right, which can often lead to the mistakes that we see in the later part of these games. So bishop f8 has been the move of choice here. And David has been given a question mark as the advantage for white does increase. Are we going to see the knight jump in? Is this the moment that Kayma cashes in?
Maybe. Knight jumping into where, Tanya? Because you also could use e6.
That is true. I'm going to let you decide. Well, I was talking about the f5 square, but now that you point out g6, also very attractive.
Yeah, I mean, this, to my eyes, is the most natural move in the world, knight to f5. I just love setting the trap of knight takes h5, queen to g6. I'll keep putting this one on the board repetitively. This is totally winning. But yeah, knight to g6 is another move to jump in. And okay, it keeps some advantage, but doesn't increase it. Knight takes h5, you would need a solution though, because this one's defended for now. If only the white knight could attack this pawn, but it doesn't seem possible. And Vincent head in hands, he's trying to calculate. Knight to f5. Pragg would need something here. Most likely a queen move, maybe even king. Oh, king to h7.
Yeah, and king h7 does stop the idea of knight takes pawn because you can capture with the king. You also mentioned queen move, so I'm going to bring up one more candidate that perhaps could be a defensive resource is queen to d8. Also guarding that knight on f6, fighting against the idea of knight takes h6. So I think these two moves would be something that Pragg would be looking at to stop Vincent's threat.
Very clever. And yeah, it's a mystery to me why this is given a question mark. I think he had to put his bishop on f8 sooner rather than later, Pragg, just to hold everything. It's quite a well-known pattern in lots of openings. A knight on f5 often is best defended against with a bishop on f8, just to you kind of control these squares that the white knight can use later on. But yeah, apparently this is a step in the wrong direction for Pragg, maybe making it more likely that Gukesh will be back in the tournament. It's like one of those game shows, Tanya, like you've been eliminated, but there's a chance you might get a second life, you might get back in. Gukesh can't relax yet.
Well, Nodibek's race to the title comes to an end, but for Gukesh, he doesn't know if his day in office is over or not because it depends on this one. If Pragg loses control, Gukesh will be back for the playoffs. Pragg needs only a draw, and it's going to be a big grind by Kayma in this one. David, let's take this moment to jump into our challenges section as well, where the stakes are so high. When we saw last, Suleiman Lee, he already got the job done. He got his big win with the black pieces. That's the top middle board against Irina Bulmaga. And what a game that was. What a game it's been for the last 4 rounds for Suleiman Lee. 4 straight back-to-back victories sees him at the top of the table. And if Wanwin and Erwin Lamy have to join him, it has to be with wins on their boards. Erwin Lamy struggling, but Wanwin, he's made breakthrough. He's found a path in. That b3 pawn looking extremely strong. The rook activity. Are we about to see a tie for first in this one?
Wow, potentially. And things have spiraled for Benjamin Bock. Actually, we were here we were at least discussing this game not long ago at all. But for Benjamin, move 41 was a mistake. And we can confirm, Tanya, there will not be tie breaks in the challenges section. That isn't the tradition there. Traditionally, I'm not sure it's a rule, but the organizers have tried to invite any players who join kind of the share of first place into the Masters section next year. Don't quote me on that, anyone at home, but I think that is one solution potentially if there are two players in joint first position. And just to backtrack one move, Benjamin Bock under serious time pressure as well, Tanya. He got 50 minutes extra at move 40. This is now move 41, and he's only got 13 minutes left. He plays rook to e7. The bar drops again. But just to show what happened the last few moves, the black king was previously on the b8 square, and he gave the king a check very logically. The black king moved, and now he blundered move 41. There's a curse, Tanya, on move 41. I don't know why it is. Maybe players relax or struggle to find their bearings, but he gave a check, allowing the black king forward, and the black king now actually has a clear path into the position.
And we do have another move. Rook e7 was played, and at first it looks like this has got to lose the b pawn moving forward, but Bock is setting up an idea. b2, he wants to meet that with rook takes pawn check, forcing the black king forward. Can you take on a5? King takes a5? Well, king b5 is met by rook b6, and then you've got that rook on the line. You pick up the bishop, it defends the pawn from queening. But what does he want after king a5, rook b6? And how is this so winning, David?
Oof, I was a bit naughty, Tanya. I turned on the engine, so I'll let you guess. But this isn't obvious at all.
Well, when you turn on the engine, I can get a sneak peek as well.
Oh.
So,
Cut it off.
so wow, it's a beautiful idea, though. It's a stunning idea. David, show it to us. Break it down.
Yeah, and it looks like there are two winning moves actually, but it's both based on the same exact concept. So just again, action replay. This is the current position, rook to e7, just played. And the first move anyone calculates, I think, just very logical move, b2. Why not? Try to make a new queen. Rook takes pawn, check. Forces the black king to take this pawn, rather than allow rook b6 to land with a check, as you said, Tanya. And now the rook is the only piece that is preventing a new queen from being born. And essentially you try to cut the rook off. So I'm not sure which one's better. I've turned the engine off now, but bishop to c6, trying to threaten this move. Bishop to b5, blocking the rook. If the rook drops back, then again, you continue to harass the rook. Oh, and now the bar slides. Maybe again, there's something even stronger. Or maybe potentially you play the move bishop to bishop to a4. I'm going to stick with that one. And you're attacking the rook. If again, the rook goes long, if it goes the other way, now you just need a killer blow. I need help finding this one, Tanya. I was going to say bishop to b5. Now that you've blocked the b file, it is this move. But what happens after a check?
Bishop a6, only move. Rook b8, only move. Oh, wait. And David, don't say it. David, don't say it. Oh, you are going to. Oh, that is beautiful. So you give a check on e2? King to f3? Wait, g4 is it?
G4. Maybe we save that one up our sleeves. Bishop
Okay.
to d3, maybe?
Aha, you deflect the king from that defending square and b1 is unstoppable.
Yeah. G4 is the threat. Like bishop to a3, you cannot promote. Oh, wait, you can promote as long as you flick in g4 next. Rook takes queen. Now you play g4 so the white king doesn't take this rook. And then you win the white rook. Wow.
And that's the problem with going g4 first. If you give away that resource, instead of putting the bishop on d3, white can simply snap up the pawn and then come back to f3. Yes, if we just have that on the board, g4, king takes pawn, and bishop d3, you come back, king f3. And then it's not as easy or straightforward for black to convert this. b1, rook takes queen, and the rook is hanging.
Wow, this is very complex, I've got to say. So Van Nguyen here with the black pieces is winning, but needs to find... Okay, he probably will find b2. One last time, b2, he needs to find this idea. Bishop a6 or bishop c6 to try and block the white rook on the b file. And yeah, from there, the rest kind of plays itself out. But this is the first step. And this could be huge for the challenger section, huge for his career as well. The Czech Grandmaster, a very talented player, won a gold medal on his board at the Olympiad. And this would be the next step, leveling up in his career.
Yeah, all the greatest players in chess, right? They've played in the Masters. They've either found their way through winning the challenges and fighting on the big stage, the big boys club, the Tata Steel Masters the next year, or finding their paths throughout the year by making it and getting invited to play directly. And it's really such a big platform for all these players. I think there's this quote which is on the walls of the playing arena, David. It's by Bent Larson, and I did have it pulled up, and I'm going to see if I can actually find it. Just how much this tournament means to top grandmasters. And this is what Larson said, and it's somewhere on the walls, motivating and inspiring these players that normal people should see Naples before they die. But the great chess masters have to win the Vaikanze tournament first of all. That's how much it means. So before you die, you got to win Vaikanze to get your name into history books. That is the Wimbledon of chess.
Yeah, that is true. A lot of the top players have featured there throughout the years. I remember watching Kasparov play there year after year, Anand, Magnus in later times. I remember Aronian winning it. It's the who's who of chess. If you go back through the winners' books. And Bent Larsen, of course, a very strong Danish grandmaster, one of the best players of his era. And yeah, that's a great quote. I mean, there's so much said about this tournament. Tanya, Linares, the Wimbledon even of chess. And yeah, of course, this is the pinnacle. But to get there, to join the big boys, you need to prove yourself in the challenger section. That's what these players are trying to do right now.
And the big enchilada for the challengers section is winning it and finding and getting that qualifying spot, right? And as we spoke about it, I think, David, you mentioned it earlier that in the challengers, we don't have a playoff. We don't have a tiebreak if two players or more are tied for that top spot. But we are getting a confirmation that the winner of Challengers 2025 will receive an invitation for the Masters. But in case of a tie, in case of an equal score, the invitee for the next year's Masters is dependent and determined on certain rules. The first of them is a direct encounter. And get this, to make this even more fun for us, Soleimanli and Van Wyn, their direct encounter finished in a draw. So it goes on to the second factor, which is the Sonneberger score, which will be calculated. And if that's still undecided, then the player with more games with black, but eventually it will be only one player who makes it through to Tata Steel Masters next year. Not clear who that's going to be, but Van Wyn keeps the fight alive.
Yeah, and the fact that they drew their head-to-head, the fact that it'll likely be decided if he wins, Van Wyn, on the Sonnenborn-Berger. I mean, I can guarantee one thing, Tanya. No chess player knows how to calculate that one. It's just a mathematical equation. It's just a bit random, I've got to admit, especially in a round-robin tournament where you've played all the same opponents, you end on the same score. It's like, how can there be a way to separate the players? But all Van Wyn knows is that he needs this point. He needs to win this game to have any chance of being up there next year. And yeah, if he does get the win, then whoever takes the tiebreak, fair play to them. But
David, the kind of chess we've seen in the challengers, and if this does go down to that situation where there's a tie with Van Wyn and Soleimanli, their direct encounter ending in a draw, I'd sign a petition to get both of them into the Masters. Just the kind of chess that we've been seeing, they both deserve a spot, and we'll find out who makes it through. As it looks like for Benjamin Bach right now, it's big trouble if Van Wyn calculates and finds this sequence of just simply pushing the pawn, but it doesn't stop there. You need to find the right square for your king and that final tactics that involves the deflection of that white king with the G-pawn playing a star role there. David, should we zoom out and check in now with the Masters and see how Pragg is doing in his defensive task on which rests the championship hopes?
Yeah, and just as we get to Pragg, we should mention his sister's playing a starring role in the Challengers section, where it looks like she is likely to stop Erwin Lamy from having any chances of being promoted up to the Masters. Erwin Lamy, the final player who can come joint first in the Challenger section, but still struggling. No longer dead lost against Vaishali, but Erwin Lamy struggling in his game. So Pragg and his sister still in action, deep now into the fifth. Almost into the sixth hour of this round 13, and queen to b6 played, Tanya. That's a very sophisticated move, I would say. Queen controls the dark squares, bishop controls the light squares. I'm not sure the exact idea. Maybe he's just slowly going to kind of tiptoe into the black position. Queen c7, totally tying down black's army. Maybe then he's got the idea of knight g6 and winning this pawn. Wow, I would never have thought of that one, but looks like a very clever move, Tanya.
Yeah, that's really fascinating because, again, it comes down to that concept of really trying to grind down every little advantage of the position before you go in to win that extra pawn. You might not even have enough once you've given up your knight. So the idea of knight f5, knight h6 rejected by Vincent, which also goes on to show his ambition in the position. It's sort of like you want to squeeze out essence out of a dried up bottle, right? Every single drop counts here. David, that e5 pawn is going to be so much more important than winning that h6 pawn on the tactics that we were earlier discussing. So suddenly, Pragg needs to be a little careful. Once the white queen arrives on c7, you will have the option to put your own queen to e7 and offer that trade, try to get rid of that pressure. So how much of a big threat is this? And does Pragg need to use this one move that he has, or can he be, just, play it a little slow? Can he make a move like queen to d7, for example? How careful does Pragg need to be at this moment?
Yeah, very good question, Tanya. I'm not sure exactly how narrow the path is, but it does feel like there are some moves you can rule out, and there's definitely some traps to avoid. I promised I would keep talking about knight takes pawn, just for anyone wondering at home.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
It's different. It's slightly different this time because the white knight isn't already on f5. But I think it's still the same idea, Tanya. Like, still queen g6, attacking the knight, and if the knight drops back, now knight into f5. And black does have a move. So earlier we had this position with white to play, now it's black to play. But this threat is so strong that black probably just has to run, like king h8, and then you give up the f7 pawn, and I don't know if you survive this. It just looks like all the mating ideas against the black king, the light squares, have collapsed. To go back, if not knight takes h5, you mentioned how scary it is, like how big the threat is. The problem is it's hard for black to do nothing. There's not that many pass moves. And now it is two weaknesses. We mentioned that earlier. It's something very important in this type of symmetrical, almost symmetrical pawn structure. It's like you've got one weakness on f7, that is the glaring one, but e5 now a target. Queen d7, maybe we make some moves, like you mentioned this one. Can I try jumping in here? The bar drops. Now you just defend, right? Just hold. I like your queen d7 actually a lot.
I did see the bar didn't really approve of it, David. So there has to be something. Knight g6 is very tempting, but bishop d6 keeps everything under control. If you go queen b8, there's queen to e8. So that's something that you'd not be worried about. Or wait, would you?
But now have we tricked black into vacating?
Queen c7, queen e7, right?
Stop chasing me, Tanya. Stop harassing the queen. Not cool. Yeah, like I go here, you go like chase me, you go here, you chase me, here you chase me, and then dance over.
Can you pick another phrase?
The tango. But queen d7, queen b8, why is this bad then? Is it... I don't know what it could be. Why is the bar rising so much?
Yeah, it's a great question because yes, what did you spot? You spotted something.
No, nothing. It didn't work. What does it? Wait, queen takes queen? No.
No ways. I mean, you just take knight takes queen. What?
Knight g6?
Bishop d6?
Now you're so stuck that I could play f4?
Okay, this is too deep. This is like 2700 plus level chess for me, David. This goes beyond me. This is above my pay grade.
Tanya, I think black is just frozen though. Like black can never move the king or the pawn, and if you move your bishop, I mean, I think black is basically just busted. Like opposite color bishops, but this knight is so bad. Maybe it can move, but the white is just going to come like king, 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 take you, or like maybe just go the whole way in.
The thing is, you put this position on the board, you break it down, and then it makes perfect sense. Yes, white is absolutely crushing, right? e5, black's knight not doing anything, no inroads, the bishop on b8, a dead piece. You only have the a7, b8 diagonal, the white king coming through, the knight on g6, tying down the black king, the bishop on b3, tying down the black king to defend that f7 pawn. But it's only when you get here, because David, humans would just stop their evaluation and their calculation beyond queen e8, queen trade, and that's got to be a draw. That's the kind of position you don't want to play. So has Vincent found this idea? Does he realize the potential that this endgame without the queens has for him?
Oh, I think Peter Lecco would see the idea. Therefore, Vincent probably sees the idea. That's my logic. But as you say, like I think it would be the same for me. If I didn't see the eval bar, I would not even consider queen takes e8 seriously. I would think, okay, I can swap queens later. But it's probably only works as well, by the way, with the black knight away from f6, because then there's no pressure on the h5 pawn. So then white has the time to kind of go hunting for this one, and then has the time to play f4. Because if the black knight were anywhere else, if it were already more active, then this might be very different. The black knight could start jumping or start taking pawns. So Vincent, he might well have seen it, or maybe he'll just see it if Pragg allows it, like queen to d7. Oh, that just shows how difficult it is. You have to defend like tactically, but you also have to defend endgames potentially. Still no safety in sight, Tanya, I would say, for black.
Yeah, and I still want to highlight the beauty of that endgame, because again, it just comes down to move by move. The fact that the black knight will be stuck on e8 is what gives white the winning chances in that position, David. You know, you go queen b8, you go queen e8. Now again, the queen trade, knight g6, yes, we all spot that. You see bishop d6, defending the pawn, and then you stop. You don't understand the potential, the poison that's there in this position. Give black one move. You play king g2, and I could bet anything that black's absolutely fine with the knight moving forward. Look at the bar dip down. Knight f6, one move away from equality. This is what makes it so incredibly difficult. The precision that's required, the timing that's needed, right? You have to strike with f4. And the point is that the f6 square gets taken away because of the fork on e5. Pawn takes pawn, you still don't have knight f6. So you have to waste one more move. And now you fall back with the bishop. The pawn goes to e5, takes away all the key squares, and then the plans that you're mentioning. This is incredibly beautiful.
Just to show another beautiful line, if the knight, I mean, black's pieces are so bad. If the knight moves, check this out, you can simply give a check, and then you trap this piece, you trap this poor bishop, the knight defends, and then you trap it. And look at the domination of white's pieces, Tanya, in the current position, but also in this endgame. It's beautiful. Wow.
Amazing stuff. So the pressure is actually a lot more than what meets the eye in this position. And the bar still says it's in saving territory for Praggnanandhaa, but the margin for error is very, very little here. You know, we made a few natural moves. We jumped around with the queen, and it just fell apart very quickly, David. If I asked you, and I know commentators hate predictions, but do you think we get a playoff or we get a clear champion today, David? I think that moment has arrived where I put you on a spot and chase you for an answer.
I mean, I'm not a betting man. I'm not a gambler, but I think playoff. I just have a feeling, Tanya. I think it was written in the stars. Ever since I did the whole commentator's curse, I mentioned that London candidates in 2013 where both of the leaders lost. Both of them were like just keeping the tension for a bit too long and lost control. They ended up losing, and it was a joint first place. And oh, wow, Pragg just dropped his knight back. And look at that eval bar. Before I can even ask you about your predictions, I was going to say, if you had 100 rating points to gamble, you gain 100 points if you're right, you lose 100 points if you're wrong. What would you choose? Would it be a playoff? But it looks like Pragg has cracked under the pressure already. Long think, wrong think there. He allows the white queen in, potentially. Why is this a mistake? This is crazy stuff.
Oh my goodness. David, what a moment this is. And this is what we were talking about, right? Blunders don't appear out of nowhere. They don't come out of a vacuum. It's the incremental pressure. Knight 8-7. And what is the move? Why is this losing on the spot? There's a knockout idea right now that Vincent has. But let's not forget, nobody's tapping him on the shoulder, telling him this is a moment. Nobody's telling him that Knight 8-7 is the losing move. Kaima has to figure this out on his own. And from a human perspective, it's not so clear because I'm looking at the board. I'm not finding it, David. Why is Knight 8-7 such a big blunder right now? Is it just simply going in with the plan, Queen C7, get that knight into G6, win that E5 pawn, and saying that Knight 8-7, how does that help you?
Yeah, I mean, that looks very tempting here, Tanya. I mean, also, it has opened up this square for the white queen to use, something that I was, droning on about there, but it does look very awkward to allow white's queen to just sit on a square like g6, supported by a knight, supported by her bishop. There's also, of course, candidate moves like the knight just landing on f5. Maybe there's deep tactics there, the knight landing on g6 we mentioned as well. But we have to figure out why. And not just a mistake, a blunder, as we see there in the game review, a critically bad move. And okay, let's try. Let's figure out. I'm going to say this one first, Tanya. Do you have a solution?
It's an idea you've been talking about for a long time, and I think we have to check it out. Well, the bar doesn't approve, and I think knight h7 could only mean one thing, right, David? He wants to plant that knight on g5. He could not have missed the move queen g6. You go knight g5, and now that knight defends the f7 pawn. So after knight f5, which was your key idea in all the traps that you had set up, maybe black has the option to simply sidestep. Now that the knight from g5 is defending the f7 pawn. But I thought this does walk. No, you don't have time for f4. The queen is hanging.
Yeah, so just hanging by a thread there for Pragg. But this is the clever defense. This is his main idea. So very useful, of course, because queen g6, if not for that line, simply wins on the spot, as we've shown in the past. So Pragg, of course, spotting that one. Wow, the bar's rising. It says 3.3 advantage for white, Tanya. Again, we need to figure out why, but this is huge. If Vincent can find the right way forward. And you mentioned queen c7.
Let's check out the second plan really quickly, because Kaima, look at him, head and hands, he's completely locked in. He knows that there has to be something. There's so much pressure on black. So again, probably not the most accurate move, but there's a huge threat, right? Knight g6, e5 pawn is about to fall. Do you have to move queen e7 here?
Queen e7. Tanya, is it going to be the same thing? No. Queen exchange? No.
No, don't do it, David. Just don't do it.
No? You sure? You sure? Queen takes. The bar's going to drop. Oh, there we go.
Moment of truth. Okay. Here I'm just relieved it's not. But what's the difference here? So after knight g6, I think the black knight's just better placed.
Or maybe the other way. Bishop to f6. And the black knight, yeah, it's so much better actually on h7 than e8 because you can actually challenge the white knight. And just to put this on the board, maybe it's knight. Is it knight f8 immediately? Maybe. Yeah. And yeah, you can even afford to go into an endgame of pawn down, like opposite color bishops, or with the knights. Now the knight is so dominant in the center, black is more than fine. Or you take the knight and you can even allow a pass pawn on f7 just to show everyone how drawn opposite color bishop positions are. The king blockades on the dart squares, the bishop blockades on the dart squares, and I don't think white can ever make progress. And wow, so not a queen exchange. Let's go back. I'll give up on that idea. I promise now, Tanya.
But then queen c7, queen e7, and it feels like you're still holding on. Let's go queen b8, David. I pinned the bishop. Your pawn on e5 is still under attack, and the bar, of course, doesn't love it because of queen b4 would be my guess.
Ooh, I missed that one. Nice. Yeah, and somehow still better for white, but not as winning as it was. So queen c7, not the best either, apparently. Although still very, very tempting, I would say, Tanya. I think if I had to choose, I would probably play this one. Just consistent follow-up. Like his last move was queen b6. What could be more natural than queen c7?
Should we start with knight g6 and see what happens? Just flip the move order, stop queen e7, and there it is. And now we want to get our c7 square in. And how is Pragg going to defend that e5 pawn, David?
Oof. You're right. Knight g6 is so much more accurate because you totally take away the idea of trading queens. Like e7 is now strictly off limits for the black queen. Whoops, that was my mistaken arrow. But yeah, the black queen can't move to e7, can't move to e6. The black queen is fixed defending this pawn. You can't move her. The black bishop, no sensible squares. That leaves the black knight. But knight back to f6 loses time. And the only other option, Tanya, is knight g5. It must be Pragg's plan.
Yeah, knight h7. You say knight h7. You say knight g5 next. And what's the follow-up here now? Can you ignore it just to demonstrate, just to see what actually happens after queen c7? Or, well, you can ignore it.
And if I play this one, if I move my king out the way.
I just want to
Wanna
point
take
out,
my
yeah, David, not in this live, but it's a great tactic that you set up. Great trap there. Let's see if chat is sharp enough in the 6th hour of play. Knight takes pawn. What does David Howell want me to fall into? What trap has he set up for me in this position? Chat, save me. Let's see. Let's see if anyone gets this. It's been a long day of chess. Wow. And as chat gets a moment, I know what you spotted, David. As chat gets a think in, we will come back with last move played by Prague was given a double question mark. Big red on our screen, that's a blunder, a wonder blunder right there. David, what does this mean and how easy the lines that we're looking at? One more time, I'm going to ask you to break down that action for us. Why is this a blunder and how can Vincent take advantage of it?
Yeah, I've got to say, it's difficult and it's deep. Vincent about to make a move. The winning idea is knight to g6. We can confirm that's something we showed just before the break. Okay, Vincent retracting his hand. Maybe we jump in just while he has some indecision here and show how he should be winning. It looked like he was reaching for his queen, Tanya.
Yeah, I was just about to ask. That didn't feel like he was going to the edge of the board, about to pick up the knight, right? Knight g6, which is the move that takes advantage of the blunder. Kaima, has he spotted it? Oof.
Other moves might let Prague back into it. Other moves would let Prague off the hook. Let's just quickly show it. Knight to g6. We mentioned this one. Black is almost paralyzed. The pawn on e5 is the big target. Knight to g5. We were talking about this move. We asked chat here after queen c7, what should white play and what should white not play? The idea of king h7 is to finally attack this knight. Now there's no longer a pin on the diagonal. We see the purpose of Prague's idea, knight to g5, defending this pawn. Knight takes e5 is the big blunder. I think chat correctly identified this because queen takes e5 and there's a fork for black this time, picking up the queen and winning. But it's actually a fork that does the business for white as well. Tanya also mentioned by chat, queen to d7 would win here. It's not any of these moves. Just to finish it off, queen d7, deflecting the black queen would have won the game due to this fork. So both sides with these forking possibilities. But instead, going back, queen g6 is the move, not knight g6. Right square, wrong piece, Tanya.
Unbelievable. And David, this is the idea that we were making work in so many lines. Combine that queen on g6 with the bishop pinning the pawn on f7 and bring that knight to f5 with devastating effect. But this is exactly what Prague had in mind, what he was perhaps hoping for, because that knight from h7 is now going to move forward to g5, sort of giving lees, a little bit of a lease to Prague's life in this position. And often when you're on the defense, right, it's just about keeping the game going one move at a time, because opportunities for defense, that's when they start appearing. Queen g6 and inaccuracy still keeps a chunk of advantage for Vincent in this one. David, let's break down the action. And a huge shout out to our chat for being so tactically aware, finding the fork, and also the winning move of queen d7. Well done there.
Yeah, I think I saw multiple people in chat there. A nice spot, including Linkin Park fan, one of them, who saw that queen d7 move. And now I think... Oh, sorry, go on, Tanya.
No, I was just about to say that, you know, if Vincent doesn't win, then in the end, it doesn't even matter. Wait, have I got the band wrong?
I mean, either way, that was a good, a nice lyric drop. Knight g5 played by Prague. Only move, we should also mention. The only move to survive. Of course, Prague found it. That was the purpose of his last move. Knight to h7. So he defends this f7 pawn. He's ready to just park his king in the corner, walk out of the deadly diagonal here. And, okay, queen f5 is the idea, Tanya. He drops his queen back. e5 is the big target. Knight g6 still on the agenda. f4 on the agenda. I can see why Vincent was tempted and attracted to this one.
And the speed with which he played queen f5, he of course had preempted knight g5. So David, a completely new sort of an approach to the position. We had been looking at lines with the knight landing on that square, or perhaps the queen going to c7, the other variation. So this does change the dynamics, but it also allows the black bishop, the d6 square, right, to come into defense. So how dangerous is this really for Prague?
Mm-hmm. Good question. You're right. Actually, the big difference, f5 looks to me a very kind of a very nice square, multi-purpose square for the white queen. You also kind of protect any squares here for the black knight to jump into, so no checks later. But you do take away, downside is you do take away one square from your knight. You do take away, you've kind of allowed the black bishop to use d6 as a protecting square. As you mentioned, I think the big target was actually e5 in the end. Multiple variations there, including that knight g6. We won't go into all the details, but there were ideas of the knight kind of attacking the pawn from g6, attacking the pawn maybe even back from f3 later on, and picking up this weakness. But now with the bishop on d6, it's hard to get at it. And maybe your move now, Tanya, maybe better to get it in while you can before it disappears. Bishop to d6 for Pragg.
It's not the absolute worst.
It's not the worst.
And now we have to check. We've got to dive in. And I like that you're holding the F pawn. That really helps me a lot. So F4, it's got to be the tempting option here. But the thing about F4 is, right, you have to time it really well because you get rid of one of Black's weaknesses. And look at that. And there's tactics again here in the position, David, with the knight on g5, the bishop lined up, bishop takes pawn, queen takes bishop. And I know exactly how sharp our chat is. So I'm not even going to put this up as a question for them. Knight h3 would turn the tables completely around. So f4, that would be the worst time to throw that move in.
Yeah, so bishop d6. I mean, I just wanted to play it because I saw that trick, Tanya, and you suggested it as a good defensive move. Probably white starts by playing king g2. Just, again, a good tip for everyone at home. Maybe even queen g4 just to prevent any, just to kind of vacate f5 as well, prevent any tricks. But king g2, when in doubt, just park your king on a nice safe square. No checks, no forks. And f4 still available for later. But yeah, Pragg, he's still not out of the woods, Tanya. He dodged one bullet there, but there's going to be several more bullets headed his direction soon.
And I wonder if in that line, exactly that final move, right? Queen to d7. And as the players think, maybe you could just show it one more time, David, because it was an absolute stunner, right? If that's the move, that's the resource, the winning resource that both these players perhaps missed.
Yeah, let's show it one more time. Knight g6 was the winning move. That would have got us one big step closer to a tiebreak, would have opened the door for Gukesh to re-enter the tournament and to fight for the title again. But Knight g6, we mentioned Knight g5. We'll just show that variation one last time. And I also want to show a quick variation with Knight f6, the only other logical move here. But Knight g5, here white would have stepped in, attacking the e5 pawn, or so we think. But there's no threat to immediately take it. The threat is actually just to play king g2, avoid any checks, and then take the e5 pawn. Black needs to be quick. So king h7, walking out of this pin, and queen to d7, winning move. We mentioned the knight fork. You're trying to lure the black queen away to take this bishop with a nice fork there. But if the black queen moves away, the game continues, but not for very long, because now suddenly the f7 pawn drops. And once that falls, it's just the beginning of the end. That is the foundation of black's position. It's like a series of dominoes. That one falling marks the end. Queen f5 coming, and black is toast. So Tanya, I just want to mention as well, knight f6, sorry, not queen g6, which happened in the game, but knight g6, knight f6 was shown to me by our producer during the break. And here, white has some very nice maneuvers to win. Maybe this is what tricked Vincent here, what tripped him up. Queen to c7, very logical, attacking this pawn. Black is actually forced to go back and defend. This looks desperate because it looks like you're walking onto this diagonal, but the white bishop cannot move yet. It's pinning this pawn. The white knight would be under attack if you move the bishop. So the winning idea, I think this is beyond anyone, even super grandmasters, as we see in this game. Knight h4, going back where you came from, or maybe starting first with the move bishop to c4. Sorry, it's pretty much Zugzwang. Just again, king h7 walks into this queen takes d7 trick with the fork.
Mm-hmm.
The black queen is stuck. The black bishop can move, but then, now knight h4. And no matter what black does, well, now the pin is threatened. Knight f6. The knight comes back to f3 this time, and finally this pawn falls. One final trick, knight g4. I think you can win in many ways here, but bishop takes f7. Check is one of them. And whoops, the knight drops next move. This is so deep, Tanya. Can't blame you for not finding it.
No, not at all. I think this is a line for either Mr. Fish or Mr. Zero. But for all of us mere mortals here, just the subtleties that are required to understand these zugzwangs where black is stuck and the exact precise move order to achieve that from a human perspective, incredibly hard to get to. We did see queen g6 instead. And I have to say, David, also looks like a very powerful option. Where you keep the pressure on all these weak factors, the f7 pawn, the e5 pawn, the knight has got this option of jumping onto g6. You're improving your position with the king coming one step forward. I still like Pragg's resource of activating that bishop on d6. Well, I say activating, a more active defense is what I mean. Just getting that to protect that e5 pawn. You called f7 as the one on which black's position hinges. I would also like to add to that party the e5 pawn. If this one falls, it's going to fall in pairs because the d4 pawn will be the next to be picked up as well. So you have to keep these points in control. And after bishop d6, king g2 is what I'm thinking. How much of a pull is this in this position, because white can very easily start thinking that I tried so hard, but I got this far. And what's next?
I'm
It's
hoping
really
everyone at
late
home
at
gets
night.
these, Tanya. Oh, I mean, I love our people of our generation. They know these song lyrics, of course. If not, go Google them. But those were the golden days of music, right? Those glory days.
And now this song isn't leaving my head. But I think, we should just deep dive into this position as well. And queen f5 on the board. I don't know if you noticed, David, on our camera, Pragg was just walking. He was pacing up and down, and you could feel the nervous energy when it was Vincent's move. He knows he's under big, big pressure in this game, right? He knows exactly what's at stake for him as well. And there we see Erwin Lamy, who's playing against Pragg's sister right now, also trying to hold his own, trying to defend a very difficult position. Comes and takes a peek. Wow, David, when I asked you for predictions last time, you said playoffs very likely. Are we sticking to that?
Yes, Tanya. I just don't see Pragg finding all the best defensive moves when he has 1 or 2 minutes left on his clock. Currently, he has 10. So I'm assuming he's going to use most of those 10 minutes on the next 5, 6 moves. And as long as Vincent can keep the pressure, keep asking difficult questions, it's going to be so hard. We all know it's easier, quicker to attack than defend. Everyone sees these attacking tactics within a few seconds, but defensive concepts where you have to curl up into a ball, walk this narrow path, that's far more difficult. How about yourself? Please disagree with me, Tanya, because I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to be right even.
Well, I'm going to say that, I think Vincent's played a fantastic game so far. He's put the pressure on and he keeps sort of doubling down on Pragg's position, making sure that, he's not exchanging. He had this option of going knight f5, knight h6 early on, getting that extra pawn, but it would have eased out the pressure. He's really trying to squeeze out this win. So if Pragg survives this one with great defensive resources, he deserves to be a clear champion. Coming out of 3 back-to-back victories and then saving this one when it really matters, when the pressure is at its highest. And Pragg is a big stage player. He knows how to let his best come out when the stakes are this high. But he's got a big task ahead of him. If Vincent is able to convert this one, then I think playoffs, that's great as well. It's the right result, David. So either ways, it's going to be a happy day for chess fans. We get more chess, or Pragg proves why he's champion material at Tata Steel.
Exactly. It's going to be a real marathon if we do get those tie breaks. I hope you all stick with us either way to find out the conclusion of the classical game here. Maybe the Blitz tie breaks later. But Pragg, big game player, that's for sure. I wouldn't mind him winning this one. He did beat me when he was 12, so I know all about his talents. And it's always the end game that he kind of comes to the fore. He plays like a player 20 years older, a much more experienced player, but he needs to survive this next phase somehow. Tanya, I just want to point out the last 4 moves have taken Pragg over 40 minutes. So he's averaging over 10 minutes per move at this point. But now he's only got 8 minutes remaining for the rest of the game. Yes, there's a 30-second increment, but that's going to be difficult. It's going to be so tough to defend.
Yeah, even with a 30-second increment, with still the piece dynamics that are on the board, the queen, knights, and bishop. And notice how Vincent is avoiding any trades of the minors or the heavy piece that's remaining. He keeps the threats, right? f4, Pragg has to keep that in mind. Knight g6 or knight f5, he's got to keep thinking about that. The f7 pawn being tender. And you can see it in Pragg's body language. He's shaking a lot. He's trying to calculate. Again, David, it's a tough one. And for this 19-year-old, one can only imagine the pressure he's feeling and how he's handling it. Queen f5, what is the best move? We've looked at bishop d6. Any other ideas come to mind for Pragg here for you?
I think I'm struggling just as much as Pragg is right now. Bishop d6 would be my go-to. Just the black bishop is so bad. Why not try to improve it? Why not bring it into the game? Another move that I wanted to make work was just to shuffle the black king into the corner, just because it's so vulnerable on the diagonal it sits on. It's been the main problem of Prague's position, that there is this pin along this diagonal. So maybe putting the king in the corner in the near future, but that does look terrifying. It looks like you weaken the f7 pawn, especially inviting white to step forward with his own f-pawn. I think it is just this, I don't know, this lack of options that makes it so difficult. Bishop d6 is one way to continue, but there are problems there. Yes, you can move the king. Yes, you can move the black queen, but there's problems in every direction. And that's what's making him think. He's down now to 6.5 minutes. Tanya, his time is dwindling. Maybe his chances slipping away as well to defend. It's going to be so difficult. Almost superhuman effort needed now in order to hold this.
Very, very challenging right now. And exactly, right? All these problems that exist in the position, add to that the time factor. And any move can be a big blunder, because really that's when the mistakes happen. The brain is already so foggy trying to defend every single aspect of the position. For Pragnananda, a lot rides on this one, but things are really not going his way. And David, it was a great start from him with the black pieces. He got a position where we thought that he might be the one who'll be pushing for an advantage. Then seeing Gukesh's downfall in his game, he takes certain decisions, and then Kaima getting his possibility. Well, he took all of that, and look at that. We've got queen b8. It's not a move that we were expecting. It does hit the bishop, but that bishop can just slide up one step, place itself on c4. Also guarding the d3 pawn. He reaches out there, stopping any threats of queen b1 check, making that d3 pawn tender. Queen b8. It looks active, but it takes the queen away, far away from the defense of that f7 pawn. Now you've got to really watch out for an f4 at the right moment.
Yeah, and this last move, this last 30 seconds we've just seen pretty much sums up the situation. Prague's moves are difficult. He's going to have to invest time trying to find the only way to survive or the best defense. For Vincent, he just plays bishop c4 in 2 seconds, Tanya. His moves are simple. He can improve. He's got easy moves. Like Vincent can play king g2 next, improve the king. Vincent can drop the white queen back, bring the white knight in. Via g6. He's got so many options he can play within a few seconds. Prague has no easy moves pretty much for the rest of this game. I'm expecting bishop to d6, as you mentioned, just trying to prevent this f4 pawn break. That feels like it's already kind of being prepared by Vincent, but what comes next? Who knows? And now down to 5 minutes. I think we're going to have to keep updating people on the clock, because that's going to play a huge role in the coming moves, Tanya.
One almost gets the feeling it's going to be the decisive factor here, and it just shows how difficult, how hard the position is to juggle, to keep everything under control. He does put the bishop eventually on d6, and now Vincent can slowly continue improving his position, get that knight to g6, put that king on g2, and every move that Vincent makes, it doesn't spoil, well, his advantage, his trumps as they exist, but it's going to get Prague lower and lower on the clock, because Prague doesn't have that luxury of just making a move that keeps the balance. He'll have to find the precise move every single move now onwards.
Exactly. He's pretty much put his queen and bishop on squares where he does prevent the f4 pawn break. But what he does next with his bishop, very unclear. What does he do with his queen? Very unclear. I think the likes of Hikaru Nakamura now would play the move king g2 in 5 seconds. Just throw the move back to Prague. Basically hammer home the fact that he's low on time and just pressure him psychologically. Maybe there's better, but Vincent, he has this luxury. So many easy moves at his disposal.
But David, the big question is, where is the breakthrough coming from, right? Let's say that Prague doesn't have too many moves. Yes, you get your king to g2. Yes, you put your knight on g6. And Prague has maximized his position. He just shuffles around. Queen c7, queen b8. Queen c7, queen b8 looks one way to try to just keep everything defended. Do you see a way for Vincent to make progress after putting that king on g2, after getting that knight in?
Simple answer, Tanya. No, I don't see the way yet. And I didn't think Vincent needs a way. That's the practical side of things talking. Like even thinking of finding a way through, I would put the king on g2 first anyway, just tactically. And only when Prague is down at 1 or 2 minutes, then I would be looking for the way, the path in. I would probably start as well with moving the white queen out of the way at some point, just to vacate the f5 square for the white knight, which looks like a nice juicy square, just considering where black's pieces have now been placed. F4 is going to be hard to achieve. I do quite like the fact that, okay, King G2 played. I was going to say, I do like where Pragg has placed his queen. Now, queen check ideas from behind will occur if white ever touches the F pawn. But how about yourself, Tanya? Do you see any immediate dangers? Or is that just still more of a conceptual thing right now?
Well, David Howell, I put my trust in you in this position. Where if you say that white just needs to make simple moves and it's a lot harder for black to play, completely agree with that. No, I don't think f4 can happen. That's the one danger that I do see for white. You can't just allow with the knight on g5 for the queen to get active as well. That might be a big turnaround. So right now for Pragg, can he continue with just simply shuffling around? I don't see a breakthrough. The thing is, I do like the move knight to g6. It's a beautiful square for the knight. But then what? Is knight to g6, let's say black's queen is on c7, and I'm trying to imagine this, and the knight is on g6, defending that f4 square. Then will it be time to strike on f4 if black doesn't have a check on b2 and the pawn is guarded enough?
Yeah, that's the one downside behind Pragg's move. If he does play queen to c7, there's no more checks, so f4 becomes more of a reality in the near future. Yeah, I mean, there's just downsides to all of his moves right here, Tanya. Like moving the king, I don't really see that happening. Moving the knight, the bishop's just landed on d6. Why moved again? So maybe another square with his queen. I'm not sure if there are any other tempting squares for it, like b7 or... Okay, he's about to show us. Pragg needs to move. He's under 4 minutes this time.
Whoa.
Time flying by. Flying by these few minutes now for Pragg.
And David, I see a lot of Indian fans in the crowd as well. What a moment this is for them. And we do have a move, and it's king to f8. And I see you have a reaction there. It's been given a question mark. That's not a move that I would have thought of in the top 5 candidate moves in this position for black.
Wow. Yeah, I wince because I see the eval bar. Vincent replies instantly and doesn't find the winning move. He gives a check, forcing the black king back where it came from. I think we need to dive in, Tanya. That was another game-losing blunder, giving Vincent a big opportunity. Maybe it's still strong for white right now, but Vincent, could he have landed a heavier punch right there? Pragg, I mean, he's got to rely on a bit of luck now. He's just got to hope and pray that there's no breakthrough. But maybe we bring the board up and dive in because, yeah, the eval bar shot through the roof, Tanya.
Yeah, it felt like there was a knockout move right there that would have finished the game on the spot after king f8. Just a shocking move, right, by Pragg. Putting this king on the spot, you're seeing queen takes pawn ideas. f7 would be a checkmate. It feels so dangerous. You're inviting the knight in with check. David, should we bring up our analysis board and take a look at this opportunity that was missed? It just feels like Vincent has a plan. He has a tunnel vision of putting that knight on g6, and he goes through with it.
Yeah, there was a big moment actually because let's just backtrack 2 moves. We've said how difficult it is for Pragg to find a waiting move. The bishop a bit stuck. Maybe the queen should have moved here. The knight also tied down defending f7. He decided to try and wait just with the king. But look at that. The bar, boom, up through the roof. Apparently, and again, this is not me. This is the computer. This is difficult. Knight to f3. He's, like you said, tunnel vision, Tanya. He's so focused on going forward with his knight that jumping back is actually the winning move. And here it makes sense. You're kicking away or destabilizing this black knight. Knight takes knight, for example, would allow a checkmate. So it's all about the f7 square. And this would have forced a win of a pawn. Maybe black could have tried defending with the queen. But I'm assuming that a capture here and then either taking this pawn or maybe even jumping in behind. This would have been super strong for white, going... kicking away the black king, you win this pawn, you promote your h-pawn. Easy with hindsight, of course, but Vincent so focused on another plan. Let's go back to the game. There have been moves. Knight g6 check. He's coming in with his queen. Black drops back. Tanya, it's really living life on the edge now for Pragg.
And yet I'm not being able to find a move that breaks through in this position. It feels like white's got all the forces in the most beautiful spot, right? Look at that queen on d7. Look at that knight on g6. The bishop on c4. The king has escaped and he checks. But David, I know I've asked this question so many times. What's next?
Stop asking me difficult questions, Tanya.
You are an in-house expert. Who do I turn to? Well, you've got chat as well. We can always ask chat for help.
Yeah, we have the real experts are there watching us. They need to take my job, but I think that is the $1 million question here. It's the title deciding question, right? In order to the master section. You need to find some masterful moves, and right now, where to go next? How to break through? Oof.
You mastered the pun game, I have to say that, David. That was really nicely done there. Bishop to f8 played. What is the next move? And let me point out that Kayma doesn't have all the time in the world himself. He's under 8 minutes, right? The clock's ticking for both these players. For Vincent, also finding that breakthrough, correctly timing a move like f4 or a potential sacrifice, he's going to need those extra minutes to work that out. Prague's hopes are also relying on Kayma's clock right now. Get him so low that he can't figure the path through.
Mm-hmm. And Tanya, I have seen the move f4 mentioned in several of our featured chats there. A lot of our chat kind of screaming out for the move f4, trying to kick away the Black Knight. And I agree, that would be the desirable move. It's what you want as Vincent Kayma, but you cannot play it while you allow a check. Suddenly your defenses have been breached. The White King no longer safe. The White Pawn needs to sit on f2 as long as there is access to the b2 square for the Black Queen.
You know, David, I think now with the setup that has been sorry, David, go on.
Oh no, I was just saying not yet with f4. Help me out,
Not
Tanya.
yet with f4. No, I'm with you. And you know what? I think I know what Vincent's trying to do. Look at the way the queen and the bishop are lined up against the f7 pawn. And this was an idea that you showed in that moment when black went king f8. Has Kayma now figured out that he can still get rid of that g5 knight? The knight retreats to h4, only to retreat further. Knight to f3, could that be the plan that he has in mind? With the queen on d7, there's no real way for Pragnananda to get his own queen to defend the king side.
Great spot. And not just by you there, but by Vincent Kayma as well, more importantly. f4 from our feature chat, wanting to get rid of the Black Knight. The knight is the king's best friend. It's the only real defender now of f7. So knight f3 also does that job. Prag about to make a move. He brings his bishop back to d6. I guess, Tanya, he's aiming to reply to knight f3 by bringing his queen over to the f8 square. Or maybe he's just going to let the f7 pawn go, you know? Maybe he's going to, just to put this on the board, knight f3. Is he just going to take this pawn? Take this knight, allow the f7 pawn to drop? It looks terrifying. And then just say, okay, this is holdable. We saw similar earlier, but this one computer doesn't like as much as an earlier position where we saw black giving up the g pawn instead of the f pawn.
And I think the reason for that is the light square bishop just becomes a complete monster, right? White will start playing for attack against the king. Imagine a battery set up with the bishop on f5, the white queen on g6, the bishop on g6, back rank checkmating ideas as well that you're pointing out. Combine that with an extra pawn, this is real winning chances, David.
Definitely. Huge winning chances for Vincent, but evaluating this as the best option, I think that's Vincent's next step. You were asking for a while what the breakthrough is. I think we found it, but no, he goes the other way with his knight. I don't think this changes or spoils anything. He can still go back to h4 and round to f3. But first, Prag is going to move his bishop back.
But the thing is, if the best option is to go back, will Vincent play that? Because he just came from that h4 square. And maybe the advantage of this is he's taken away queen f8 in a lot of those lines. He's taken away that f8 square by the bishop. Well, he could come back with the knight to h4. We might see this position repeat with bishop d6. At some point, it feels to make progress. Vincent will have to find the idea of trading off that knight on g5 with knight h4, knight f3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's maximized. That's the problem. He's not Max Varmadam, but he's maximized his position. And what to do next? The only thing I see, Tanya, maybe I'm just too tunnel visioned myself here, but the only thing I see is getting rid of that Black Knight. The Black Knight is the glue. You need to unglue Black's position. And Vincent, looking at his score sheet, he's wondering whether he can go back to h4 safely without allowing a repetition of the position. That would only be the second time he can play it.
He's got a double check, triple check, quadruple check, whatever it takes, because so much hinges on this game, right? David, there are two issues that your mind has to fight with this maneuver of knight h4, knight f3. One is that knight is such a beautiful piece. Whether it's on f5 or g6, you never want to trade that white knight. So you have to understand that it might be time to give away, to transform your advantage into material advantage by trading off, the gem and glory in your possession. The second aspect that you have to fight in your brain is that leads to a pure opposite color bishop complex position. And how much of a chance does that give you? So evaluating these two factors is what makes it difficult from a human perspective to play knight h4 and knight f3.
Fully agree. It's so drilled into us from a young age. Okay, he goes back, knight h4, he's going to find it. But I was going to say, it's so drilled into us that opposite color bishop endgames, you avoid them like the plague if you're trying to win. They have such a big drawish tendency. But with queens on, with rooks on, major pieces, opposite color bishops, they do favor the attacking side, the side with a safer king. Hence, exchanging knights doesn't save Pragnananda here. It still gives Vincent a big, big initiative. Big chances to win, especially if you get a pawn in the process. And it looks like f7, you can't defend it anymore. Pragg looking at the score sheet as well, thinking, oh, can I claim threefold repetition? It's not going to be the third time. It'll be the second time they've reached that position. So he's just got to move. Why is he not moving here, Tanya? No time.
Because David, he needs to make sure. I mean, so much rides on this, and if there is a threefold repetition, you can't miss that opportunity. Just fully understand that emotion, but he does realize that it would be a wrong claim. He puts the bishop back, and Vincent Keymer, he finds the move. He plays knight f3, getting rid of Pragg's key defender on g5, and you can see it with a pause. Pragnananda, he's ready with a response. Is he about to bring the queen closer to the black king and defend that f7 pawn? How are we evaluating, David? Knight takes knight, pawn takes knight, bishop takes pawn, and the ending that's going to come from it, I think the bar answers the question.
Yeah, the bar answers the question. Maybe the better version was to trade off knights willingly as black, and we would have gone into that type of position we showed a bit earlier, opposite color bishops, but with queens, white a pawn up. Still some drawing chances, though, there would have been for Pragg. Now the eval bar says +4 for Vincent after trading knights, and that's because the black queen is overloaded here, Tanya. There are tactics, again, that Vincent can choose to employ right now.
Wow, Keymer really playing spoiler right now. Knight takes knight, pawn takes knight. He could give up that bishop for the f7 pawn. If that bishop's captured, you win the piece back with an extra pawn in the position. David, I don't believe that queen pawn ending can be held by black. With this horrible pawn formation, the white queen so incredibly active, that looks absolutely busted. That means Pragg wants to sidestep with the king, but the attack that's going to follow, what do you think? What's Gukesh thinking? Is he already getting ready for the tie breaks right now?
I think Gukesh is deep in preparation mode. Maybe looking at some openings now, realizing that, okay, he's had a few hours rest. That's the good thing about finishing early, even if it wasn't the result Gukesh wanted. But you have a couple of hours of rest now. You get another chance, potentially. Wow, we might be in for a very long day, Tanya. And yeah, Gukesh, he'll be getting excited. That is for sure. I think we're at that point where it's pretty much a guarantee that Vincent's going to get close to a win. Whether he puts the ball in the back of the net, gets over the finishing line, that's the only remaining question. But he has a winning position objectively. Starting with knight takes knight and that endgame you mentioned, he's just got to evaluate correctly this queen ending. He's actually low on time, Tanya. That's the one thing that I'm struggling to come to terms with. Pragg, he's actually been playing pretty quickly, but Vincent's been the one investing the time in his desperation to find an immediate, very clean win.
Pragg is so exceptionally practical like that, right? And he's able to sort of find precise moves, calculate, keep the game going. He knows that he can't burn the clock too much. He has to force Vincent to take his own time to try to bring his clock down to keep practical chances alive. And Keymer here, he's hesitating. I saw a featured chat there that sooner or later, Vincent had to find this idea of knight f3. And that also makes a lot of sense. In chess, when we're playing, we try different maneuvers, we try different concepts. Your opponent up to the task of holding everything, finding the correct response. And eventually you realize that, you know what, there is this one idea. You might have even thought of it as a last resort to trade off the knights, but you got to go for it. And that moment for Keymer has arrived. For Pragnananda, he's relying on Vincent's clock as well right now. He's relying on a mistake by Vincent for that championship. Otherwise, he'd have to do it all over again. We get a fight. If this ends with a Pragg loss, we get an all-Indian showdown for the championship with Gukesh taking on Pragnananda in Blitz games.
Oh, and how fun that would be here on this weekend to be leaning back with some popcorn, enjoying some premium Blitz games with two of the strongest players in the world. But okay, Vincent, will he find it? I think he has seen it. So I disagree with the feature chat there. I think he sees it. He's just trying to evaluate it. and trying to figure out if he can keep the tension any longer. Tanya, this might be a one-time offer. If black gets the chance to play queen to e7 and offer the trade of queens, the white queen is kicked out, evicted. Black actually gets the dream setup. If black can get the knights off without losing a pawn, then he might well just survive. So Vincent has to trade knights here. It's that simple. He has to go for that move you mentioned. Knight takes knight, then bishop takes pawn, check, deflect the queen, and try to... Okay, he plays the first move. Will he play the second?
And Prague's fans are all rooting for not to see bishop takes pawn on the board. Give Prague one move, the bishop will fall back, the queen will come on e7, but bishop takes f7. It's played. Vincent Keimer, is he about to take this victory, David? How do you keep the game going? Queen takes bishop or king h8? Which offers maximum resistance here?
Oh, this is so tough. Queen takes bishop. You only play if you can find some counterplay. The problem is your pawn structure is so bad for Prague. Not only a pawn down, but as you mentioned earlier, Tanya, weaknesses on e5, the backward pawn, the weak g5 pawn, vulnerable to checks and to be picked off. But then again, king to h8, you're pretty much just curling up into a ball and saying, okay, I'm going to do nothing for the rest of this game. You try and break through. It's an attempt at a fortress. Do you believe in fortresses, Tanya? Is that something that could become a reality for Prague?
Well, I love to see them happen on the board, and of course for Prague that would be a dream. But how do you even create that in this position with the light square weaknesses, the g5 pawn weak as well? You know, you put that light square bishop on f5. Let's say Prague was to put the king on h8. The white king can march up to g4. Every single piece can play a role in putting pressure. And how long can you keep things together? The queen lands on g6. If white wins another pawn, even a queen trade in a lot of cases, that endgame would be winning as well. David, as you're showing the ideas that we're talking about, the g5 pawn hanging, queen e6, queen g6, 8-6 at the right time, 8-7 weak. And in Prague's mind, you know, right now, it's also coming to terms with the fact that, well, he's realizing, yes, he's trying to fight this out, but a playoff is coming up. He has to now fight the world champion for the title.
Yeah, and neither of the two players will be 100% confident after what has happened today. Who would have thought this, Tanya? I mean, a playoff, very real possibility, two players at the top of the table, but to both lose, I mean, just the form they were in, just almost unthinkable, showing that the spoiler role is a real thing. And it's nice to play chess with no pressure. That's what Vincent Keimer and Arjun Erigaisi have been enjoying today. But for Prague, for Gukesh, with so much at stake, it has been a tough time. And I think I would take the bishop. I can't explain exactly why, Tanya. It just feels like getting the bishops off the board. White's bishop's so strong. That might be the best bet. But okay, he goes into the corner, trying to build the fortress on the dart squares. But as you mentioned, the white king is coming, maybe even now. And the white bishop, once it lands on f5, will just control the whole of that flank.
And David, I want to make a point that, you know, if this was to go into a playoff, just the way it's played out, for Prague having a 6-hour match, right? Or even maybe more. I've lost count of the number of hours we've been on it, and we've been commentating. These two players have been fighting out, navigating, calculating their way through. Gukesh, yes, he had a disastrous loss, but he's managed to get some rest in. He's managed to kind of just forget about what has happened and get himself ready to get in the zone. I wonder how much of a factor that's going to play going into Blitz coming up next for this big title if Prague was to lose. And this looks very busted for Black.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Tanya. How can it not play a role? Playing 6 hours. I mean, Gukesh was actually done 3 hours ago, pretty much. That is crazy. Just the kind of differential there in terms of preparation, in terms of rest. Prague's mind is still going to be racing by the time they're going to start those Blitz games, assuming we get there now. And it does look like it's the most likely scenario. I mean, playing a 6-hour chess game feels like you've literally run a marathon, Tanya. And yeah, then you have another one to run. You have another couple of short sprints, actually. It's a total different time control, of course. They'll be playing Blitz if it's a tiebreak, but it's like you've run a marathon. You have to break for a little while, and then you have to go on a sprint. It's going to be difficult. But in the meantime, Vincent retreats his bishop. The bar does a little dance, but still winning for white.
Well, you keep all the trumps, right, as they are, and this move doesn't spoil anything, but it still surprises me because it felt like that bishop on f5 just felt like such a stunner, such a beautiful piece, and it had a direct path to it. The move bishop b3 also makes the plan of king h3 or king f3, getting that king into the game, a little more complicated, but Vincent has all the time in the world. The bishops come to b3. On the next move, it could go to e6 and f5. There's absolutely no rush. The problem for Prague is that there's no counterplay. There's no target in this position. The black bishop, the dark squared bishop can't get to any of the pawns. There's no pawn break to create a chaos, a mess in the position. The queen has no infiltrating squares because the back rank is so weak. The moment the queen leaves and lands itself on the first rank, it will be Vincent giving checkmate to Pragnananda's king. And with all these factors, David, no counterplay is just so hard. And you look at Prague, and coming back to that moment, right, where there's such little time between the turnaround of the playoff and when this finishes, to adjust and adapt yourself to a brand new time control, to come to terms with a 6-hour fight. Nothing is more painful in chess than having a long battle and have it not go your way.
Exactly. That's something you normally need hours, maybe days to recover from, but the players will be going into a playoff if Prague loses this game. And I think also a cautionary tale for anyone at home wondering, bishops versus knights, why not exchange off a bishop for a knight early in the game? Prague essentially, as early as move 3, brought out his bishop, his light squared bishop, traded it off for a knight. And look at what's happened on the light squares. He's been dominated on the light squares ever since, or at least since we jumped in just before the move 40 mark. This white light square bishop unrivaled since as early as move 3-4. I mean, it's been the MVP this whole game. And look at this sad bishop in the meantime, just forced to pretty much act as a big pawn, as a stopgap. Okay, queen to e6 played. Tanya, he's just doing it the slow way, Vincent, but now he has lined up this battery. Queen to g8 checkmate will tie down the black queen forever, so he is ready to bring the white king forward next.
And Prague sets up his own defense, puts that bishop on f6. Well, the king, it needs to be a piece in this game, and you're very nicely highlighting a king march. Notice how the play is all on the light squares, the square of your own bishop color complex, right? Put the king, go up the board, no checkmating ideas. Again, you get your king to g8, to g6 as white. And the dreaded question, what's next? Are you going to break with 8-6 at the right moment and then put a lot of pressure on that bishop on f6 and slowly the position crumbles? Vincent, he's channeling his inner Peter Lecco, everything defended. Every piece defending another. This full cemento in the position, no counterplay given.
Cemento. That is such a Peter Lecco move. You're right, Tanya. Bishop to c4. I mean, the bishop is just as good on b3 as c4, but it's just aesthetically nice to have these pieces protect each other. King h7. Prague's just going to wait with his king now. And, okay, a check for us from Vincent, forcing the king back. If the king had come forward, that would have been checkmate. That would have been an anticlimactic way to end this game. But maybe now it is time for the white king to play a role. Finally.
Because how else are you making improvement here? What other chances of inroads do you have? You need to time that 8-6 move at the right moment, for which you might need an additional reinforcement in the position. And Vincent, he's not reaching out for the king. I wonder if now he wants to reroute that bishop on c4, bring it to e6, bring it to f5, David, just shuffle around. And even if it feels that white isn't making immediate progress, these kind of moves in chess, this idea, this power statement that you can go for one plan, then another, and then eventually strike with the king moving forward on 8-6 is really a great conversion technique, because every move comes with incremental pressure on your opponent.
Yeah, exactly. You test them one direction, they might fall, but if they defend, you go another direction, you play around for ages. I don't think he needs to worry about the 50 move rule, Vincent, in this one, so he can just test Prague forever, pretty much. At some point, he will push a pawn or make a capture. I still think he should play with his king on the g4 square. Now, for example, going with the king doesn't work, though, because this pawn is hanging and the black queen can drop back. So, you need your queen maybe on the e6 square where it stood earlier. I'm really surprised he took his queen away from there. I've got to say, Tanya. Okay, he does jump in with his bishop first, though. He blocks the black queen. Oh, that's a nasty move. Now, if the black queen runs, then h6 is just going to end in checkmate. Wow. Vincent, this is sadistic.
And David, I'm just trying to think about that. Does that really finish the game on the spot if the queen was to move to kind of provoke h6 and then come back with your queen to f8? Is that something, a way to try to look for a way to neutralize some pressure in the position? He's not going to play it. I'm sure there was a big downfall over there. Maybe you'll show us the way, David, but he does go bishop to b4. If you can just check out that line, the dangers that exist.
Yeah, let's check it out, because Pragg would have loved to move his queen if he could have done. Let's go back one move and queen to d8, for example. I'm not sure what the best square is, and I thought this was checkmate, Tanya, but h6, you're right. This would not have actually done the job, because black's queen can slide back. If pawn takes pawn, of course, this is checkmate, and likewise, if you defend with the bishop, this is checkmate. After queen to h5 check, and next move it's over. But queen to f8 in this position, and actually black holds the dark squared blockade, and it's definitely a good thing for black if pawns ever get exchanged. Just to mention as well, h7, I thought that this might be the winning idea, drop the bishop back, bring the queen round to g8, but actually black is okay, blockading on the dark squares. This is the most passive position I've seen, Tanya, but it might be okay.
Well, it didn't happen. Pragg keeps the queen on f8. It still holds a huge advantage, your idea of h7. The winning position continues in that as well. But bishop b4 was the move of choice here. You can't yet pick up the g5 pawn as the bishop on f7 is hanging. He goes back queen to f5, lining up against both e5 and g5. And now again, David, king h3, king g4. I think he has to follow it up with that. Once Pragg's bishop falls back, there's really not much else you can do. Queen e7, back rank checks. I'm not sure if that's a happy option. Look at Lamy. He's looking at the position from back behind there. As his game comes to an end, we'll get an update on what happened on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A result has just ticked in. Vaishali, so Pragg's sister, has just won and broken Erwin Lamy's chances, ended his chances of getting into the Masters section. There we see Erwin Lamy on the right and Pragg's sister, Vaishali, supporting him just in the background there, just blocked by Pragg himself. And yeah, they will be leaving the playing hall. Very important results. Oh, such a good tournament for Erwin Lamy in the end, Tanya, but not quite good enough, falling at the final hurdle. And yeah, his chance to get into the Masters ended eventually. Bishop d6.
Yeah, fantastic by Vaishali, and she had this position which we checked in. It looked like it was a job of conversion. She did that flawlessly, so a great finish by her. But can her brother save this one is the big question. Can he get a great finish as well? And the king does arrive to the party. King h3, king g4. Putting more pressure on g5. Pragg will still try to hold the position together. But David, how do you even do that? Once the king lands on g4, again, so many of the endgames will be winning for white, picking up that second extra pawn on g5.
Yeah, that's a very relevant point, Tanya. Like, even a queen exchange will not save black if a second pawn falls. Black's king is so bad in the corner, it might even be stuck in the corner forever while the white king just runs around, causing havoc, picking up pawns, ushering its own pawns forward. Bishop e7 is Pragg's attempt to defend. Maybe he'll park the bishop on f6 just to defend all of the weaknesses, but there are simply too many weaknesses. And I'm sure here Vincent's going to continue his king's journey. Both sides are around the 1.5 minute mark, but that should be more than enough, Tanya, with the increment. The clock, maybe not as much of an issue as we thought. Vincent has done most of the hard work, just needs that finishing touch.
And even though we're in the 6th hour of play, look at the fans who are all crowded in. Usually at this point, you see the crowd thinning out. You see only the players there, but it just feels like we've got more fans and more people in De Morian right now than perhaps the day how it started with, because it looks like the action's not about to end. We're going to have an intense playoff for the championship as Vincent Keimer marches up with his king. Almost feels like marching up to victory right now. He's just done everything right. And he's done everything so slowly, with so much calmness, David, not rushing with a plan, trying one way, one direction, moving on to another, sort of testing the water, testing Pragg at every single instance that he can. And slowly but surely, Prague's defenses are falling apart. King to g4, every single piece is tied down. The bishop on e7 now can't move. He has to reach out. Well, he does play bishop to f6. All right, that's a move that I actually missed because I thought somewhere h6 will come. David, what's the idea now? Queen g6 allows queen c8 check.
You don't want to allow that one. The white king needs to be sheltered somehow. I'm expecting him to move the bishop. Again, I'm not sure exactly which direction. I quite like e6 as a square, Tanya. I love your idea earlier of queen g6 and kind of getting the bishop, lining them up on the light squares and sneaking in with a checkmate eventually. But yeah, he has choice, of course. He can drop back. Still needs that breakthrough. Not easy.
David, I have a question to ask. If the queens were traded on g6, and I don't know how we'll set this up, but Chad, I want you to imagine and visualize this, that white trades the queen on g6, bishop e6 on the board. So let's say queen e8, and now queen g6 would be a big blunder, but the bishop would be hanging. But just to make a point, queen g6, queen takes queen, pawn takes queen, this kind of an ending with the black king boxed up, that has to be completely winning for white, right?
Yeah, let's show this, Tanya. I think it would end in zugzwang simply. Let's put it on the board because bishop e6 was played, and this might become very relevant. Even if it's not a pawn on g6, it might even be a king on g6 later. Queen to e8. Okay, let's pretend this bishop isn't hanging. Let's pretend he put it on d5 last move, but queen to g6, if there is an exchange of queens, this is, well, I was going to say totally over, but wait, how is this not over? Okay, the bar does correct itself. Bishop to e7, king to f5, and I was going to say here you just play like a chill move like f3. Black's bishop has to give way. You lose one of these pawns. Although, is there like bishop e7? Is there stalemating ideas, Tanya? Like king takes pawn, bishop d6. I think.
Yeah, let's give you a helping hand, right? King takes bishop, and well, g4, take it with a pawn, and then you got your stalemate on.
Why don't we take the g pawn? Doesn't work. Yeah, maybe this is just over. But okay, this is a realm of fantasy, but could become relevant a bit later. Queen e7 played by Prague instead of queen e8.
It might get relevant very quickly. Bishop d5, queen e8, queen g6, and we might be seeing similar concepts come.
Yeah,
the one thing white needs... Sorry, David, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I guess black keeps the queens on, maybe with some checks, but continue, Tanya, because queen g6 definitely on tap for later.
I was about to say the exact same thing. The one thing white needs to be careful of is a check on the diagonal, the c8, h3 diagonal.
Yeah, and Vincent doing it very long way around, I must say. But then again, I mean, as someone who likes playing long games, I just really love it when people come up to me and say, you know, you're not paid by the move. Why do you go on for 7 hours? It's because you do tire the opponent out in the process. You do genuinely just ask them all the questions. You feel like you've, done a proper day's work. And f4 played by Vincent. Whoa. Why, first of all? Oh, the bar still likes it.
That's a very committal decision because you've taken away a key weakness in Prague's position. Does this give Pragnananda the hope to come back in this game? If you take pawn takes pawn, what's going on here, David? Is it e5?
Let's try. Yeah, pawn takes pawn e5. The black bishop only has one safe square on the edge of the board. That is the h4 square. But this is so committal. I was going to say Vincent's going to play for 45 moves and then he's going to play f4 at some point. And then literally 5 seconds before I said it, he beat me to it. But it feels like such an odd moment when he didn't need to. But then again, Prague has under 20 seconds, Tanya.
He needs to make a decision. He has to make a move, Prague. He's reaching out for the queen. Play something. You're down to 10 seconds. He does play queen to d6. Keeps that e5 pawn defended. Oof.
Now the question is, can he trade queens, Vincent Keimer? Can he take the pawn on e5? Because that would allow a queen exchange, Tanya, and something very similar to what you mentioned earlier.
David, I want to say one thing though, compared to the position we had 2 moves earlier, Prague has got to be feeling slightly relieved seeing f4 on the board because it does open up. It gives him some chances. As a player on the board, you're feeling, okay, you've got more chances to get a check in. You've traded off one of the pawns. Somewhere instead of just defending and sitting still, does this give a practical opportunity to Pragnananda? Vincent, Has he rushed in with f4? He keeps a chunk of his advantage, but he needs to be precise with the follow-up.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It's no longer a long-term win. It's a very concrete path to victory. He retreats his bishop. Maybe he should have traded pawns there, Vincent Keimer. Not finding the right path. Can Praggnanandhaa pull this one out of the fire, save this game? Wow. Okay, he's got a huge threat on the board, Vincent. He wants to check from behind and catch the Black King. Embarrassed here. Maybe the Black Queen needs to retreat. I don't know whether you can take this pawn. Scary times. Pragg is reaching the 10-second mark now. Tanya, can he hold it?
He's got to be feeling some relief. He stopped shaking as much, but make a move, Pragg. You're down to 3 seconds. He does reach out. The queen comes back to the back rank to defend any checks. David, yes, I see the bar, but again, anything can happen. I don't think a result is given anymore, simply because the position's opened up. One of the key weaknesses in Pragg's camp is gone, that g5 pawn. It's not as easy for Vincent anymore. And look at that. He's feeling the hesitation himself. What is the clear path here? Is there a clear path here?
I don't know if there is any more. Vincent, as you said, not only has he traded off a weakness, and actually both weaknesses, the e5 pawn was a huge weakness as well, maybe about to get traded, but he's also opened up his own king. The white king no longer entirely safe from checks. So moving the white queen now, like forward somewhere, might allow some counter checks from black. He brings his bishop forward. The advantage is disappearing every move, it feels like, Tanya. Pragg has never been closer to a draw since he dropped that pawn. This is the closest he's been.
He's never been closer to the championship, David. This is a big moment for him. The one threat that black needs to watch out for, Pragg has to watch out for, is 8-6. But 8-6 isn't that strong as long as you can hold the position to get more to get together. Pawns get traded off. It's better for white. And now Vincent Keimer has to find this move. The blue arrow makes an appearance. Queen e6, or Pragg is back in the game, David.
Oh, did you see that on the camera? He did a little stretch, Pragg, and Vincent doesn't play it. He blows the win, double question mark. The computer says it's back to level. It's back to a draw. He's giving up a pawn. He's trying to line up his bishop and queen on this diagonal, but it's a bluff. It shouldn't work. Pragg just takes it.
Of course he just takes it. Where do you line up? The queen on b8 is doing a fantastic job of keeping everything defended. There are no checks in the position. The bar is level.
And checkmate threatened, but Pragg can just walk his king away from this checkmate threat. Do you just run now? Do you move your king? The only other move I can see here, Tanya, is to block with a pawn. That's an option as well, but I think I would run with the king. I don't see any checkmating.
Run, Pragg, run. g6 just looks incredibly dangerous. He's reaching out for the king. King g8 appears. The queen on the back rank is defended, so no check on the 8th rank will be a killer move. There will be no ideas of winning the queen with a check. Pragg is back in the game, and how? He's the one with an extra pawn. David, if there's no checkmate, white has nothing to play for here. There's no strategic advantage anymore. Everything's lost.
Wow, Vincent not playing practical chess. He gives a check. He's still got some chances if Pragg goes wrong, but Pragg hides his king in the corner again, still surviving the checkmate. But Vincent, what he should have done is just make 20 quick moves with his pawn, with his, I don't know, queen, bishop earlier, built up some time to think, and then go for the breakthrough. He went for the breakthrough with a minute left on his own clock, Vincent, and he just has no time to work out the way forward. Now he's blown the win. He went from a pawn up to a pawn down, Tanya, as you're saying. And this is all based on trapping, checkmating the black king. But it was an illusion, an optical illusion. There is no checkmate. The black king will run anytime checkmate is threatened. And the dark squared blockade, we were joking about fortresses, but it proved to be the case. Black holding everything on the dark squares. And look at Pragg. He knows he's so close now to the tournament victory.
He does. It's been a complete shift in Pragg. The way he's sitting, the confidence he's showing. He knows this is his moment. He's past the worst right now. He just needs to be careful about the one move checkmating idea. Can he still run with his king to g8? Can he just continue with the same defensive idea? Or has Vincent set up something tricky there?
Wow, Tanya, I've just checked the computer. h6 would win. If black moves the king now, the king move worked previously, but it would lose now on the spot. If Pragg moves his king, he's losing. He has to try something else. He has to, for example, give a check with the black queen, or maybe bring the black queen over to defend. He cannot touch his king, Pragg. Otherwise, we might be going to a playoff.
And he's got 40 seconds to figure that out. And he realizes the dangers because he hasn't played it instantly. King G8, 8-6. Once again, the tables would turn and Vincent Keimer would be in a winning position. Pragg needs to use the queen to guard the king right now. He has to put the queen on that square and not the king. This is a move that will decide the championship. David, he's got to find it.
15 seconds for Pragg. He cannot touch his king. He has to move his queen. He has to give a check. There's only 2 moves to survive. A check or first, just landing the queen on a defensive square. He's reaching for the queen. Oh.
He changes his mind at the last moment, gives a check, and he says, bishop f5, then I'll put my queen to g8, gets another 30 seconds on that. But one thing's clear, he's seen the idea that it's the queen that needs to defend the checkmate.
Wow, changing his mind there with just a couple of seconds left on his clock. That was daredevil chess from Pragg, but he does find the key defensive idea. He's curled up into a ball. The black king can't move, the black queen can't move, but they don't need to move, Tanya. And his bishop will just pass if the move is given back to him. Vincent retreats his king. And now, Pragg has another only move. Vincent not out of it yet, testing Pragg. Bishop back to f6. The blue arrow shows it. Everything else loses. The only safe square for that bishop. Tanya, will he find it?
And it's a tough one, right? Because you're always looking at this move 8-6. And you're placing a bishop on a square where it's actually coming in the way, where it's actually provoking white to play 8-6. David, there are ideas of coming with your queen to d5, forcing the white bishop to e4. I'm not really understanding why is bishop f6 the only move. Why is that the only way to keep the balance here?
That is so difficult. I think just the fact that the other bishop moves along the other diagonal, they just lead nowhere. You need your bishop near your king. So when white eventually does try to reroute the bishop to attack the black queen, that you can use the bishop as a bit of a blockader. He finds it, Pragg, again. Only move found. Wow. He has a second career as a tightrope walker, Tanya, if he ever wants one. He's living life in the fast lane, on the edge, and surviving just about by the skin of his teeth.
He finds the only move with just 4 seconds on the clock. Pragg is back to being on beast mode. David, given that opportunity, it all comes down to that move f4. He felt it. Practically, he's back in the game. You could see it. You could sense it in him looking at him on the screen. Vincent, he's not going to give up. He's going to play this out. Despite being a pawn down, there are no dangers to white because Vincent's bishop and queen have stopped all activity of Pragg's queen. He's going to play this out. But as long as Pragg just keeps shuffling around with the bishop, it's hard to see a breakthrough in this position right now. How dangerous is the idea of 8-6 is the big question. Whoa, and the bar shoots up! Whoa. Oh my goodness, what happened?
Tanya, nearly every other bishop move was a draw. He could have moved his bishop to any other safe square and he might have held, but now his bishop is going to be lost.
8-6 on the board. And did you see that Pragg played bishop e5? He looked up like he just had a realization that it was the wrong square. Loose pieces dropped off. That bishop on e5 can come under checks and be won. But is it that clear to you? Yes, 8-6 is on the board. But what's next? Why is this still so dangerous? Let's say you move the bishop away. You go bishop to f6. Why is this winning?
We still need to find that knockout blow. Is there a checkmate? He moves the other way. Wow, bishop f6 was one question, Tanya, there. I do think that maybe white was actually threatening to knock black out on the spot there. So he moves his bishop to a safe square for now, but how long can he stay safe?
David, you're completely right. And the more you look at it, the more you realize bishop f6 would have lost on the spot with checks. Grab on g7, queen check, and it would be mate or you'd lose big material. So Pragg, he does move back with the bishop to b8. Players are playing on seconds. For Praggnanandhaa, does he feel that he can hold this position? I'm still not seeing a direct checkmate. If pawn takes pawn, the queen picks it up, the king starts running towards the other side of the board.
Oof. Yeah, it's not over quite yet. Vincent still needs to find the little finesse. I would be just moving my king, gaining a bit of time on the clock. The white bishop, if it ever moves, would allow the black queen to jump out with a check. So you have to be a bit careful about moving your bishop out the way right now. I don't think taking this pawn does the business yet. Vincent retreats his queen, Very classy move. He doesn't need to rush. Pragg is totally paralyzed in the corner there. Can never take the white pawn due to an immediate checkmate on the h7 square. Oh, Pragg's bishop, though. I think he's just zugzwanged here, Tanya. The black bishop has no safe squares to go to. It's always going to end up on a square. It can get attacked.
Wow, and he's again down to under 10 seconds. And in these kind of positions, it's just impossible to make the right move if it even exists, right? Because you're looking at all these checks. Pawn takes pawn, your bishop hanging. Pragg moves the queen away. David, one more time. We're so close to playoffs in this one. Pragg almost survived it.
Tanya, it's a forced checkmate. Vincent spots it. He can do it with a series of checks. We see a trade. The white queen is going to slide back now on the diagonal. There we go. And as soon as the black king moves, it will get checked by the white bishop. Checkmate's coming. Pragg's about to resign. We're going to tie breaks. Gukesh is back in the tournament.
And Pragg knows it. It's over in 2 moves. The bishop check followed by checkmate. And as the realization dawns on Pragg, and he was so close to saving this one. David, this is heartbreaking to watch. A 6-7 hour battle here. And it's about to end right now.
And there we go. It is a handshake. Praggnanandhaa resigns. Vincent Keymer, congratulations to him. He takes the win. He ends the tournament on a high. Very impressive from the German Grandmaster there. Never relented in his pressure. But for Praggnanandhaa, it's heartbreak. He's going to have to do it all over again on the brink of tournament victory. He was pegged back and now faces a tiebreak against his compatriot Gukesh for first place.
And you can, for the first time in the tournament, see the nerves on Pragg, just what he's feeling right now as he sets the pieces back. He knows the day isn't over for him. But Vincent Keymer, he ends on a high note and he leaves the championship wide open as the arbiter steps in, perhaps to inform Pragg of the tiebreak rules of when the playoffs will begin. For Pragg, he came so close to saving this. David, needing only a draw. Both the leaders at the start of the day suffer defeat. 8.5 points is where they're at. It's going to be an all-Indian showdown for the 2 young superstars. Only one can claim the trophy. It's between Gukesh Dommaraju and Praggnanandhaa. The day isn't over. The championship is not decided. What a crazy turnaround this was.
Wow. Tanya, I'm still catching my breath. One of the most unexpected endings to any tournament. I think we can agree there. Who would have expected that before the day begun, that Praggnanandhaa and Gukesh would both crash to defeat? And the manner of the defeats as well, just so contrasting. Gukesh getting knocked out, that sucker punch from Arjun Erigaisi. Erigaisi attacking with black early, winning a quite quick game. And Praggnanandhaa being ground down there in over 70 moves, actually 80 moves there in the end. 1 or 2 accurate moves away from getting that draw that was required. And yeah, we go to tie breaks. And I have a feeling there's going to be more drama ahead. It's almost guaranteed at this point. We're going to see 2 exhausted, emotional warriors try to battle it out one last time. We go to blitz from marathon chess to sprint chess. It's going to be exciting.
The drama continues. Sorry, David.
I'm just catching my breath. Sorry, Tanya. Recovering.
Yeah, I mean, what a day we've had, right? Just unbelievable stuff. Gukesh and Pragg having this fantastic tournament right at the top, coming as these leaders, well, 2 players who feel almost unbeatable. And then when it matters the most, Gukesh suffering a big defeat at the hands of Arjun, where it really was an Arjun Erigaisi show. What a performance, a power performance it was by Arjun. Never gave Gukesh a chance in that one. And then Pragg needing only a draw, goes into a 7-hour marathon, gets a worse position. Keymer, just incredible technique there by him, but then giving Pragg the opportunity to come back. But David, in the end, one inaccuracy. The clock was the 17th piece, and it favored Vincent in this one. We had the last position. We saw the handshakes. We saw the heartbreak and the pain on Pragg's face. But take us through these final moments and the checkmate that you spotted.
Yeah, let's just rewind a few moves to that decisive critical blunder by Pragg. Fair play to Vincent Keimer. We were slightly harsher on maybe some of his decisions to go for it, to be so direct, to simplify the equation. But ultimately, he kept asking difficult questions of Pragg, forced Pragg to find only moves time after time after time. We see the white queen and bishop battery tying down black's queen, black's king in the corner. If the black queen ever moves, it's simply checkmate on h7. So Pragg was forced to move his bishop here, no other options. And actually, any other bishop move to a safe square would have drawn this game, bishop to e7. Maybe my choice would have been bishop to h4, just to try and leave the bishop on a protected square on g3. h6 now would have maybe scaring Pragg, but you can just wait. You just keep your bishop on this diagonal, and there's no knockout for white here. We see, however, that his bishop was forced away from these defensive posts. He moved his bishop to e5. We saw an immediate realization on Pragg's face, because now after h6, he is simply lost. His intention was to drop his bishop back to f6, but suddenly he realized that pawn takes pawn is now met by queen takes. There's a check in this direction, forcing the black queen to block. Another check. The king has to move, and another check, and the bishop drops next turn. Instead, he was forced to put his bishop on a really bad square. He had to go the other direction, away from the defense, and that's where we saw Vincent Keimer launch the killer attack. As you mentioned, Tanya, it ended in checkmate after queen g5. Black had nothing else to do. The queen moved, but after a capture, now a check, and here Pragg resigned due to king to g8 being met by the bishop, delivering the killing blow and a final checkmate. All because Pragg couldn't find the best home for his bishop, but ultimately we can't argue with the fact that Vincent deserved it, Tanya. He put the pressure on for 80 moves and was rewarded.
He really did. And a fantastic, fantastic technique there by Vincent, finishing it off with tactics for Pragnananda. It is heartbreak, but it's not over. He still has a fight ahead of him, and it's going to be against the world champion, against Gukesh. Gukesh will be back in the arena. And what a day it's been as we set ourselves up for playoffs. For the two-player tiebreak, there can only be one winner, there can only be one champion, and you can only delay the inevitable, because in 20 minutes from now, it will be the All-Indian clash. It will be the epic showdown. We will have two games, a two-game playoff. There will be a drawing of lots to decide who starts with the white pieces first. It's going to be a two-game blitz playoff, I believe, David, with 3 minutes and a 2-second increment for each of the players. If that remains in a tie, if it ends in a 1-1, then we have a sudden death where white gets 2.5 minutes. Black will start with 3 minutes and a 2-second increment per move. And that format will be played on till we have a winner. These are the tiebreak rules. This is the playoff that's coming up between Gukesh and Pragnananda, two players who've had a fantastic run until the very last day, and for Pragg until the very last moment of the last day here at Tata Steel Masters.
Well, it's my honor to be here with the 18th World Chess Champion, Grandmaster Gukesh Dammaraju. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
So first question, you just won the World Championship. How does it feel to have every childhood photo in history now be on the internet? Everybody's been posting about when you were 9 or 10 years old. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I think I look better now than I looked at that time. So I'm not too happy about that, but okay. Let them have the moment.
We've talked about this story a lot of you being at the Chennai World Championship and you being inspired. Have you thought about the fact that there's a random 7 or 8-year-old Indian child somewhere out there who you've never met, who is going to look back on this moment? Have you thought about that idea?
Yeah, it's a huge honor for me. When I was 7, looking at Vish sir and Magnus play, I thought, how cool would it be to be there, and to know that I'm actually the person that kids are looking up at and getting inspired by to take up this beautiful sport. It means a lot to me, and as I've said a lot before, chess has given me a lot of things, and giving chess back these little things, is the least I can do. And if someone, some kid looks at me, gets inspired, gets into the top in the future, or even becomes a future world champion, it would be a huge honor for me.
I kind of want to see bishop takes h1 though. Just that would go down in all the chess books forever for history.
Oh my god! What?
He didn't see it. Oh my god, it's on the board.
There's
Firouzja.
no way.
Wow. This is once in a lifetime stuff. Fabiano on the camera, Robert, smiling. He knows he's... Wow. This is immortality stuff.
Yeah, this is going down in the best games book, beating Alireza Firouzja in essentially 9 moves of chess, 2 brilliancies in a row.
The black king is actually trapped on the back rank, whether you allow your rook on a8 to fall or whether you allow the pawn to push forward. And Firouzja's going to resign after 9 moves. There we go.
Game over.
It's over.
What if I told you I became a grandmaster by solving the same exact chess exercises over and over again? Yes, it sounds a little crazy. After all, if each chess game is different, why repeat something you've seen before? Shouldn't you practice calculating in unique positions every time? Well, that's true. But there's also a way to train your brain to streamline its calculations. And that's the woodpecker method. My friend Hans Tikkanen invented the woodpecker method in 2010 when he was training to become a grandmaster. 7 weeks after he finished using his method, he earned all 3 of his GM noms to earn his title. Seeing his success, I had to try it for myself. And a couple of years later, I became a grandmaster too. As word spread, others tried it too, with excellent results. Okay, so what is the woodpecker method? The first step is to take any large amount of chess puzzles and solve as many as you can in 4 weeks. In my books and chessable courses on the woodpecker method, there are about 1,000. You don't need to do that many, especially if you are a beginner, but I recommend solving at least a few hundred. At the end of the 4 weeks, take a break, a few days at least. Then solve the same exact problems again, this time aiming to finish them in 2 weeks. You might remember the solutions from before, that's okay, but try to solve them like you're seeing them for the first time. After you finish the second cycle, try solving them in 1 week, and then a few days, and then try solving all of them in a single day. It's not easy work, trust me. I didn't think I was going to make it the first time I tried it, but the results were remarkable. It's because much of chess is pattern recognition. Rather than calculating every single move in a position, your brain looks for ideas and patterns it has seen before first, and they help you calculate faster and more accurately. So by doing the woodpecker method, you're building intuition, helping your brain become more efficient in calculation. And that's the woodpecker method in a nutshell.
Czech Grandmaster there. We will be seeing a lot of him next year. A big breakthrough event. It's been a great not 24 months. It felt like 24 months today, but it's been a great 12 months for Tai-Dai, who also won a gold medal at last year's Olympiad individual board performance. And he deserves that big chance. But also shout out to Suleimanli, who came so close, just pipped there in the tie breaks. And Tanya, the challenges threw up so much entertainment. That was a fun one to watch as well. But ultimately, the Masters, this is where everyone's eyes, the whole chess world is focusing on right now.
It's the centerpiece, it's the center court of the Tata Steel Chess, famously called the Wimbledon of chess, as players aim and vie to get their names etched in history. And it's the tie breaks that will decide the title. And here's the format. It will be a best of two, starting with blitz. Each player gets 3 minutes. Every time they make a move and press the clock, a bonus, an increment of 2 seconds is added. If after a two-game blitz playoff, the score is tied at 1-1, it goes into sudden death to decide the colors. We will have drawing of lots. Will Gukesh play white first, or will it be Pragnananda? If it goes to sudden death with a 1-1, then David, a very exciting new format that we haven't seen before, with white getting 2.5 minutes. That's an extra 30 seconds for black, who starts with 3 minutes on the clock, but 2 seconds increment per move. And this sudden death continues till we have a winner. David, one thing's for sure. There are not going to be any co-champions this year at Tata Steel Masters.
I don't know if scores are still tied after 7 games. Maybe we'll... I'm joking, Tanya. We'll never see a shared title here between these two youngsters. They both want it that much. They both want it so badly. And it's nice to see new things being tried. Tata Steel, it's got this reputation of being very innovative. They always try to invite hot young prospects, a really varied field. And I mean, we're so used to Armageddon at this point, Tanya, across the board in most tournaments. They're trying something new, and no Armageddon. That means we might get perpetual chess forever, but that means more entertainment for us, more drama, more nerves. You name it, we've got it all here.
It really is the final battle for the crown between the two Indian superstars, the two prodigies destined for greatness. Gukesh versus Prag. They started the day as leaders. What a tournament they've had so far. And then a final round heartbreak for both of them. It feels like shared destiny by them today. But there has to be only one winner. And David, the one thing that separates the narrative, we did touch upon this earlier, is that Gukesh gets a bit of rest. For Pragnananda, the heartbreak and the pain of a 6-hour marathon and then getting checkmated in the end. How do you deal with that? If I've got to ask you one question. If right now you could speak to Prag, you were on his camp, what would you be telling him?
I'll be telling him that he came close. He deserves to be here. He's still got a great chance. It feels like a 50-50. I would also be telling him Gukesh doesn't have